Let's start at the beginning. So where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in a military family. So, military myself, but never foresaw myself doing that as a young child until a certain point. But, life was life as a military kid. My dad was a Marine. My mom stayed home. My dad was not only a Marine, but he was a Marine attack pilot. And so we moved around quite a bit growing up. So the military lifestyle was just something that it was kind of all I knew. So, but watching my dad serve and moving around, I think really is, what kind of gave me the spark as far as the direction I wanted to go with my life. So, we lived in places like, Morehead City, North Carolina. I was born there. My dad was stationed there as a Harrier pilot, flying the AV-8A Harrier and eventually the AV-8B Harrier. And we've lived in Virginia a couple of times. We've lived in Arizona. And then finally in Tennessee. My dad retired there after a 26-year career in the Marines. So,
what year was that?
He retired in 1996 from the Marines after 26 years in active duty. Yeah.
Okay. And did that take you through high school, or was it close to it?
So he retired just after my freshman year of high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did high school in northeastern Tennessee.
That's cool. So you're just moving around a ton that whole time.
That's right.
You're like standard military brat.
Standard military brat. That's what you're used to. You make friends, and then it hurts when you got to peel that Band-Aid off and you move, but then you make new friends, and you get resilient as a kid. I don't necessarily know that it is the best lifestyle for all kids, but it worked for me and my brother, and we enjoyed, making friends and moving around and seeing different places for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Any sports?
Yep. I grew up doing swimming and basketball were the two big sports for me. So I enjoyed those very much. The swimming kind of tailed off after a few years, but the basketball continued, and that's what I stuck with. I always thought I'd join the NBA, but quickly realized that I didn't quite have the skills for that. It was a good goal, but thankfully I came back to my love for aviation, and that's where I went from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if your dad's like Marine 06 Harrier pilot.
Exactly.
Probably thought he was like King Kong.
I did think he was King Kong for sure. Yep.
You get to hang out with like his buddies ever and like hear their stories?
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember buddies coming over to the house for, dinner, parties, get-togethers. And as a young kid, I just looked up at all those guys in a flight suit like they were a god, jumping in this incredible machine and going fast and, protecting their family in America. Like, I loved it. Yeah. I love being around the group, because not only did I admire what they did, they were just really cool guys to be around. Yeah,
that's awesome. So like, when did the idea first permeate your mind that you wanted to fly?
When I was 8 years old. So, I watched my dad fly from the time, that I can remember until he stopped flying in 1992 when I was 12. But when I was 8, I decided I want to go fly. Specifically, I wanted to go fly Air Force jets.
Air
Force jets. I wanted to fly either the F-15 or the F-16. And my dad was all in for that. He told me, if you want to go fly and you want to be the best, don't join the Marines.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because he told you got to be a rifleman first. And, the flying community of the Marines is a very small component of what the Marine Corps does. And so he said, yeah, if you want to fly, go in the Air Force. So he was very supportive of that.
Dude, that's pretty interesting, because I had an uncle that was a big influence on me. He was an Army aviator, so warrant officer.
Okay.
He did 2 tours in Vietnam as a crew chief. Then he got out, went to the reserves.
Yeah.
Went to the warrant officer program, ended up becoming a Chinook pilot. At 58 years old, he did 18 months in Iraq.
58, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, one of the most experienced helo pilots in the Army.
Wow.
And he told me the same thing. Like when I was thinking about enlisting at the time, with the, in the back of my mind, like, hey, it'd be cool to have that opportunity to fly.
Yep.
And he said the same thing. He's like, the Air Force is all about flying airplanes.
Exactly.
And that's where you'll have the greatest opportunity to do that.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. I think that's pretty good advice, really.
I think it was great advice. I mean, not only did I like the Air Force planes better, but my dad never gave me any pause from his perspective as far as supporting what I wanted to do in that. He even shared with me that he wanted to fly Air Force jets, just the way it worked as far as that time around Vietnam with getting into the Air Force and stuff like that did not work out the way he envisioned, but the Marines offered him the ability to go fly, so he took it. So that's how he ended up doing that. So
yeah, that makes sense. So as you're going through high school, you're doing everything possible to get on that pilot track. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, there was from 8 until probably, 11, all I wanted to do was fly. And that's when I had my quote lost years, if you will, where I thought I was going to go play NBA basketball. So I was all in for that, as much basketball as I could play. And then I realized, actually after an air show in, I think 1994, 1995, I was 14 or 15. And just like, what their job is, promoting Air Force aviation or Navy aviation, the Thunderbirds came to Tri-Cities. And man, that 4-ship took off, and the precision and the power and the speed. And then the solo, the number 6 solo came by at 300 feet, just under the speed of sound with vapor coming off the jet. And I was like, all right, no, this is what I'm doing. And so pretty much from that point on, my entire life's goal was to fly jets, fly Air Force jets. So everything I did from that point on was extremely calculated as far as how I would prepare myself to do that. So nothing was not thought about as far as how I was going to accomplish that goal from that point on. So it's really been a lifelong dream since I was 8 years old, with a couple years, as a kid to, explore dreams. But, once I, rekindled that a little bit, it's been my whole life trying to do that. Yeah. Fly fighter.
How'd you do academically?
I was a good student. I was very driven. And so, I think anything that I did not have in the smarts department, I made up for in work ethic. So essentially you couldn't outwork me.
Yeah.
And there was no stone unturned or, hour, spent in a poor way when I had the opportunity to study. So I was a good student, A's and B's. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you excellent at math? Like one of the common perceptions,
no,
if you go to air shows,
no.
Everybody just assumes, when I talk to the public, they're like, oh,
right.
You were like a math genius, right? You did electrical engineering.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case.
No, I was not a math genius. I was much more, I liked writing papers better than I did doing math and stuff like that. A fundamental understanding of math, the amount that you learn in, grade school, high school, college is plenty to be a fighter pilot. So you can study, as anything that you want, but you got to get your degree to get your commission. And then from there, it just comes down to work ethic and little bit of, probably a little bit of God-given talent, but definitely the work ethic is what will set you aside from others. So that's kind of what I went with.
Want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. I'm excited to tell you about Papa Bear Naturals. Papa Bear produces all natural, USA-made skincare products, including tallow balm, sunblock, deodorant, and other personal care items. One of the cool things about Papa Bear is that we here at 7 Barrel Ranch are one of their beef tallow suppliers. So when you buy from Papa Bear, you're supporting us and many other small ranchers as well. It's a great American company with great American products. So check them out at papabearnaturals.com and order today. military brat.
Yep.
Making these moves.
That's right.
Dude, that's probably pretty powerful to have a goal at age 11 like that. Like,
yeah.
I think one of the hardest things a lot of young people have now is just figuring out what that goal is. Because it's like, once you know what it is you want to do, you can then focus all your bandwidth towards accomplishing it.
Yep.
And then you start seeing that it might be achievable. But I look back a lot of times and just think like, just knowing what I wanted to do when, which was later than you, but just figuring that out was one of the greatest like gifts of my life, because I was able to crack that code at a young age. You know, you're not sitting there at 45 going, okay,
that's right.
What do I want to do?
What am I going to do?
So it's like, whatever it is, you just, went all in, even though it probably seemed kind of fanciful for some people. Say you want to be a fighter pilot, but yeah, that's cool. You had that vision. So where'd you go to college?
Went to college at University of Tennessee in good old Knoxville, Tennessee.
Nice.
I did 4 years there, and all 4 years I did Air Force ROTC. So, your normal college kid curriculum, but then I took ROTC classes where you would have, depended on the semester, but probably 2 to 3 classes a week. And then they called it a leadership laboratory, where you'd put on your uniform, you'd wear it for the day, and then you would go into kind of like, I guess, a formation, if you will. So all the students that were ROTC students would meet up, and we would have, formation and drill and inspection and things like that, learning Air Force culture, learning Air Force customs and courtesies, all that kind of stuff. And you would get together and then run the squadron and the wing, as they would call it, within the ROTC unit, that they would essentially, it mirrors what the current Air Force is like, just on obviously a much smaller scale, just teach college kids. So I did that all 4 years, and it was a great experience. And I still have lifelong friends from that experience, just like, most people probably do if they go through stuff like that. So
Did you consider the Air Force Academy?
I did. I wanted to get in the Air Force Academy, but my standardized test scores were not high enough. And so that was kind of a big hit, that I couldn't score whatever it was, a 30 or 31 required on the ACT. I can't remember what it was, but I took it 2 or 3 times. It got within a point or two, but I could not get that required score to get into the Air Force Academy. And so I was like, well, what's the next best thing? Okay, well, I'm going to go ROTC and work hard there and try my hand, and ended up working out. So I'm actually very glad I did. Just with, the Air Force Academy is great. Don't get me wrong. And one of the benefits, as you know, is that if you are physically qualified to be a pilot and you want to fly, you can have a pilot slot at the Air Force Academy. At least when I went through. But in ROTC, you got to compete for it, and the percentage of people competing for it with what the Air Force will accept year to year just depends on the needs of the Air Force. So it's a harder route to get a pilot slot, but it ended up working out for me. So both are wonderful routes to go. I specifically like the college a little bit more because I had more freedom, because I didn't have to wear a uniform every day. I didn't have to be at an Air Force Academy, and I liked learning about life kind of outside of an academy with, friends that I could have more latitude to go do things with and go places than be a little bit more of a strict, more regimented lifestyle that obviously, they have the Air Force Academy, which isn't bad, but I'm glad I had the college experience along with the military, for sure.
How was the selection rate for pilot training at that time? Like, do you remember how many people were trying to get in, and how tough that was?
Yep. I think it was around the 50%. So I think 4 or 5 of us got a pilot slot that year. Yeah, I'll never forget. I was on my way to spring break, and with my roommates from college, and we were getting ready to go down to the beach and have a good time. And I was walking out of the building, and my commander was like, hey, Cadet Deloney, like, come in here. I'm just like, okay, what could he want, as a fadeaway jump shot for me before I went down to spring break? Like, tell me to be safe. Like, copy that, sir. Like, I'm going to be safe. I don't want to screw things up here. But then he told me that I had a pilot slot, and that made the spring break even better. So
that's one of the best days in your life.
One of the best days of my life. Yeah.
I remember that distinctly, and you just never forget.
Exactly. It was one of the best days of my life. Several other friends found out, and we were pretty stoked. We were pretty stoked, man. It was awesome. One more step to get to your goal, and each step that you take fuels the fire more. You're like, I did it. All right, I can get to the next one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. All right. So, hey, were your grades pretty good?
Yeah.
At UT?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, A's and B's. A's and B's. Yep. There were times where I elected one summer, actually 2 summers, to take summer school because I never wanted to take a school load that was too much for me to handle, along with ROTC and other things I like to do with my life to enjoy it, and potentially take a hit in my grades. And so I was okay with spending some of my summers, at least a portion of it, doing summer school so that I could have that focus on the grades, even though it was year round. I was like, I'm not willing to sacrifice right now any potential chances that I would have to look as good as I could on paper with grades to be able to go to pilot training.
Yeah, that was just something a lot of people missed, I think, was that in the pilot selection criteria back in that era, they just looked at your GPA. They didn't care what your major was.
That's right. It was just GPA.
Like electrical engineering, and
that's right.
You have a 3.0 in the hardest program in the school.
Exactly.
Doesn't stack up to the, psychology major with a 4.0.
So you mean 100% correct.
So if you know what you want to do, you better do the program that is easiest for you, I'd say.
That's right.
Or I don't know if easiest is the right way, but maybe something that plays into your strength.
Yeah, something that you enjoy, something that you really want to versus something that you feel forced to do to try to get to where you want to go. Especially if you're given the option, then do what you want to do versus what you think you should do. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's what I went with, and I'm glad I did. And so it worked out for me.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. All right. So you get done with school.
Yeah.
And then off you go to pilot training.
That's right.
That's where we met.
21 years ago.
Dude, this feels like yesterday.
It feels like yesterday. Yeah.
For sure. So fortunate enough to go to Whiting Field and fly with the Navy.
Yep.
It was a pretty cool exchange
Good old
program.
VT3. Yeah.
I don't think they're doing that anymore.
No, I don't think they are either.
Down.
They're going to like the UPT 2.5 or 1.5 now, and they're really changing some of the amount of actual flying you're doing. And I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently on it, but obviously, like, come on, dude, like, it can't be better than what we went through, right?
Definitely not.
I mean, like, they made the best pilots when we went through, right?
I know. We were like the last really good group.
We were the last
students.
Best pilots out there.
It all just completely went to hell after we were done, which is unfortunate for America.
Man. That's right.
But, yeah. Okay, dude. Whiting was I had a great time at Whiting. Like, what? I mean, talk us through, like, like what was going through your mind through that process?
You mean just like from when we both showed up to Whiting?
Yeah, just like the academics. Flight training.
Oh man, I guess, like, obviously I was excited to be there, but it was the gravity of being there, knowing that, like, you're there, and dude, if you want what you want, like, you only get so many screw ups, right? So I mean, it was stressful and I was nervous, but I was also super excited to be there because it's where I wanted to be. It was a little different because I'd expected to start just like you with Air Force training. And so that whole, what they call it, joint specialized undergraduate pilot training, I think JSUPT. It was neat. And one part of it being neat was that's where my dad started flight school, was at Pensacola with aviation pre-flight indoctrination. And then he went off to, I can't remember, maybe he stayed in Pensacola, I can't remember. But obviously you go from Pensacola with the academic piece then to Whiting where we met. But it was fun. And I liked, as we found out with the Air Force, you have that formal release where you're there 12 hours a day regardless, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever. With the Navy, program, it's much more like college, where it's like, hey, here's the academics, here are the classes, here are the flying, just like you saw. And for me, I kind of like that because I had more time on my own to study, to chair fly. And then obviously, like if you were done at noon on a Wednesday, well, I could go out to the beach. I could go to the gym and then manage my time and my life to go, hey, I'm going to enjoy life here. But then when I get home, I'm buckled down till 10 o'clock at night. You know what I mean? So, and it was fun meeting Navy guys and gals, Marines, Coasties, or Coast Guard. So it was fun getting to train with the other services as well. And then of course it was fun being on the beach. You know, the Navy always picks the better locations. The Air Force is, deserts out in the middle of nowhere, for pilot training. But it was fun being down there on Pensacola Beach and having that opportunity to, when you had time to relax, to relax. So I guess the one downside was just the time it took, because that was about a 9-month program, if I remember right, between API and then the Navy. And I think that's because of that less strict type of, course with timeline. They're not as strict with that. The Air Force is. It's like you got to pump these students out on this timeline. The Navy is a little bit more relaxed, which
they're like, yeah, whatever.
They're
dude.
like, yeah, whatever. Well, that's the Navy. Like, yeah. We'll hang it out there and we'll get pilots.
Just finish whenever you feel like it.
Finish whenever you feel like it. That's right.
Yeah. Dude, I remember that's when we hit it off, because you were like dead set on becoming a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'm gonna connect with my buddy here, and we're gonna accomplish this goal together.
Yeah.
And so it's like it just seemed it was easier having like that mutual support.
Right.
Because we're just like we will not be deterred. I don't care how hard it gets. Like,
that's right.
We're going to study our butts off. We're going to work hard. Not going to be deterred. And you kind of, other people I felt had their goals, but then they got a little wishy-washy. Like after they got kicked in the face a few times.
That's right.
And it was just like, I just remember for, that era, for my perception of you is just like, you would not, there was like no chance you were going to fly something else.
That was my hope and prayer. And I was going to do everything in my power to make that, make my goal happen.
Yeah.
And it was good. Like our I think our friendship, the timeline was accelerated because we were like a couple of the only Air Force dudes there. So it's like, you're walking around, it's like, there's a guy with Air Force patches on. Like, I gravitate to this person. Let's get to know each other because we're in this together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that part was, I think, initially beneficial to, our friendship and, working through tough times, learning how to fly planes together. So for sure.
Like how was your flying performance? Like like what was your psychology when you're going through that period?
My psychology, like before
like,
I would
did you
fly,
like
or?
while like just as you're progressing through that program? Are you feeling like you're performing to the level you were hoping? Like, did you have any kind of setbacks? Or like was it kind of smooth sailing at that point?
It was definitely not smooth sailing. You got good days and you got bad days, right? And you have certain phases of training that you're better at than others. Like for me, like the formation flying came more naturally than instrument flying. And I had to bust my tail and study extra hard in instruments to figure that out. And so I'd be on a high if I did well. And then if I did poorly, we're all our own worst critic, right? And so I would get pissed off. I would get, upset at myself, but you train yourself to have a thick skin and a short memory, right?
Yeah.
The short memory is kind of a joke, but like the thick skin's no kidding. I mean, like it's not personal. Like the debrief is not personal. At least it shouldn't be. It's purely constructive criticism. And so if you want to get better, you have to put your ego and your feelings aside, so that you can absorb that feedback and then go, all right, I'm not going to mess this, and this up. The next flight, I get another chance. But you only get so many chances, right? You only get so many X rides in each phase. And so my mindset was just, hey, how can I improve? Like, how can I keep getting better? How can I keep not focusing too much on the failure. But I failed plenty of, several rides. And so you just try not to let that get you down, because as soon as you get in a bad place mentally, then obviously, your next flight may not go as well because you're thinking about that, not about the just getting the job done.
Dude, we have a mutual friend who was like an excellent student in college, like top engineering graduate. We were talking about him yesterday. Great guy, still friends with him. But he could not cope with the critique every day.
Right.
He wanted to be perfect.
Right.
And it's never perfect. And so no matter how good you do, there's always an opportunity to do better,
Yeah.
And he just got so bad where he couldn't sleep. He's just completely unraveled until he self-eliminated from the program and went on to do something else and was very successful at it. But just to kind of thinking about that resiliency piece and being able to just press on, even though you've gotten kicked in the face, I think that's where you start to see that separation, I think, between the guys who continue towards their goal and either self-eliminate or decide they want to do something else. Like that's where I first started seeing that split.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, like I used to look down on that from time to time, but I don't anymore, because it's not for everybody, and that's okay. Just because it's not for them doesn't mean that there's not something for them, and what's for them may not be for me, may not be for you. It's all in God's plan for where He has you going. And so I'm just thankful that at least my dream was where, God wanted me to go with my career, and they matched. And so I'm pretty thankful for it.
Dude, I think being too smart can be a detriment to some people.
Well, we know that you and I are both good with that.
They just can't let it go. We're like, okay, what do we do today? I don't care. I already forgot about yesterday.
I already forgot about it. Yeah, that's right.
Short memory, thick skin, right?
You got to have it, man.
Yeah. So do you remember when you found out you got selected for the fighter bomber track?
I do, because you and I both found out the same day.
Yep.
Because we, let's see here. It was all had to do with your NSS score, right? Your Navy standard score. And that was, remind me, it had a certain, your grades on your grade sheet, the certain number you had above the minimum grade would kind of really almost, I don't know if it was exponential, but it took off as far as what your overall in number would be. And we had to have a number like above like 55 or something like that, right? At the time to even be considered for the fighter track. And so you and I had a number that was above that significantly because of how hard we worked, right? And so we had a feeling it might happen, right? Because I think, did we know how many T-38s they had?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. It's been too long. But anyways, we both had an idea that it could happen. And then we had to go see, you remember his name? Commander, what was his last name?
I forget, but I have a picture
I do too.
from that day. I remember it.
Yeah, we got the picture, and then we brought in a bottle of Jeremiah weed. Remember that? And some shot glasses, and we kind of hung it out there. We're like, this is just in case we get a T-38. If not, we're going to drink our sorrows away versus our success. But we went in there, man, and he just went right down the line. He's like, Lieutenant so-and-so, XYZ, this place, whatever, helicopters, helos, I think he's like, I think you were first. It was like Lieutenant Stark, T-38s, and this huge smile on your face. Lieutenant Deloney, T-38s. And I think we gave each other a high five, like right there. And the commander smiled. He thought that was good.
Yeah, and for the listeners, this is kind of like the first sorting that happens.
Yeah.
So when you start pilot training, you're in a large class. In the Air Force, it might be in our era, like 30, 35
something
people.
Like that. Yeah.
And then you get about halfway through. So whether you're flying the T-34, T-6, T-37 back in the day, you get done with the initial phase of training, and then they split you up. So fighter bomber track goes T-38, then heavy kind of tanker cargo type track went to the T1, and then helos get split off as well at that time. So,
Right.
and I think it was only like 5 or 6 out of that group of roughly 30, 35 would get a T38.
Yeah.
And again, this is constantly changing. The syllabus is changing. We're dating ourselves here, 20 some years
ago.
But that's basically how it went down. And so when you're in this, large group and then you make it to the very small group, it's really a cool feeling.
Yeah. Yep. It really is.
And then, then unfortunately we pack up from, our time on the beach and drive out to, Vance Air Force Base in Oklahoma.
That's right. And we remember we forgot some of our records. And within the very first week of us showing up, we got chewed out by the squadron commander.
I remember that.
I thought we were done. I was like, this is it, man. We just showed up. We've been here a week and we're so dumb. We forgot our records. And we had a face-to-face with the commander, and he knew us by name the first week. Great place you want to be, highlighted immediately.
Yeah. What was that, like our check ride or something?
No, it was our medical records, because that auxiliary field outside of Pensacola housed your medical records. I can't remember the name of it, but of course it wasn't in the same place that we trained. There's 3 places: Pensacola, where they kept our medical records, and Whiting Field. And when we left Whiting Field, we just totally forgot our medical records were at the other location. I mean, it's like, come on. Like, I'm assuming they're going to send this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously now they would electronically, like you wouldn't even have to worry about it. Right. But of course we get there, and I think our flight commander, old Dragon Wiles, is like, hey guys, you forgot your medical records. And LBG, little bald guy, it's like, it's you now, right?
Yep.
He wanted to see us because we forgot our medical records, and now the medical group is having issues in processing us because we didn't do our job. And so I remember he pulled us into the office, man. We stood at attention, and he's like, I hear that you guys forgot your medical records. And we're like, yes, sir. Obviously he's like, why did it happen? So we were honest and told him, and then he sat us down, and he's just like, he was right. I mean, he was, and I know inside he was laughing his face off. Like, he was laughing and going, okay, these guys are scared to death, but he was fair and he was right. And he goes, hey guys, you're going into a business where little errors can have big, long-lasting results, i.e., you're given a lot of responsibility when you fly fighters and bombers. And so it was a good lesson learned that you have to cross the T's and dot the I's and have attention to detail, even at that small level, because you're going to be given a multi-million-dollar jet with weapons on it. And you only have to have 2 switch actuations to release a weapon, the master arm switch and either the pickle button or the trigger. And that's a lot of power given to a 24, 25-year-old lieutenant, and you got to get the job done. So I appreciated later, obviously, his instruction and correction.
It's kind of ridiculous now to remember that, because I legit thought we might get ejected from the program.
Me too, man. I was
like,
scared
we're
to death.
done. We called your dad, I think.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, what's going to happen to us?
And I think he laughed. He might have had the same sentiments, like, you guys can be fine. This is hilarious. Like,
yeah.
Like, but that was dumb.
We're so worried. It was like,
yeah.
We're just going to be kicked out of pilot training.
Yeah, I think we did call my dad. I remember that. Yeah. Oh, man. That was funny.
Well, too, in that era, I felt like it didn't take much for them to wash you out. It's pilot training, and especially IFF.
Oh, yeah. IFF especially.
So getting removed from training happened all the time to people. So
and you didn't want it to happen for something stupid. I mean, maybe for your flying performance, and you tried and tried and tried, but not for being a nitz, right?
Yeah.
Not for being an idiot.
Yeah, it's so funny. All right. So then you start flying the mighty Talon.
Right.
So how was that transition from the 150 knot T-34 to a supersonic jet?
It was brutal. Dude, it was hard. I mean, not only were we having to learn Air Force rules, Air Force terminology, and the pace of the Air Force training with formal release, but yeah, like you just said, we're learning how to fly a plane that is cruising at twice the speed of a T-34. And so I just remember it being a handful to start. Like, my very first flight, I'm like, this thing is going so fast, I can't keep up with it. And it's really, that's the thing that, they ask me, it's like, what does it feel like to fly fast? And I'm like, well, a lot of times I can't even tell because you're so high, you don't have a reference point to know how fast you're going unless you're doing a low level or something like that. But it's things happening faster than you can keep up with, hanging on the tails, as we call it, right? So I just remember that it was an intimidating aircraft because you're flying a jet for the first time. It's twice as fast. There's new rules. And we were like the new kids on the block because the rest of the Air Force kids that track selected have been in the same class for the last 6 months. And we were kind of the outlier showing up. And then they made me, because I had the earliest graduation date and commissioning date, they made me the class leader. And so I had to come in as the nobody, as the class leader. And they're like, who is this guy? Who's this guy telling me what time to be there? And, make sure you polish your boots and make sure your patches are clean. And so I had an uphill battle to start. At least it felt like for me. I don't remember what it felt like for you, but that's kind of what it felt like for me.
It was hell on earth.
It sucked, right?
It was like, I was terrified. Dude. I remember sitting in the EOR at the end of runway. So getting ready to take off the first time solo and thinking, I don't know if I can actually land this airplane. I barely did with an instructor in the back. I'm not sure why he signed me off.
You're good enough. It's good enough, man. He'll figure it out.
Yeah. Just thinking this thing is on the edge of out of control at any given time.
Yeah. I told my son, they asked me, they're like, Dad, have you ever been scared flying? And I'm like, yeah, many times. And they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, you figure out a way to work through it. But I distinctly remember, I don't know if it was my first solo, it was one of my solos, but just like you, I'm sitting there in the hammerhead at the EOR and I'm holding the rudder pedals and my legs are literally shaking, just shaking. And I'm like, I'm about to take off in this jet. Just like you said, I'm like, I hope I can come back and safely land it. And so you got to work through it. But I, turn the oxygen to 100%, put the visor down, drink, have a glass of water and say a prayer and then, throw it in afterburner and see you later. And then things get a little bit better once you get airborne.
Yeah. You stop kind of ruminating on it and you start executing.
It's like, I've got to do this. So I've got to figure out a way to push through.
And the IPs were phenomenal. They knew us better than we knew ourselves at that time, as far as our capability. When they signed you off, I felt like we're actually now looking back, you're like, actually ready to go.
Yeah.
But it literally took right up to that sortie prior.
Right. That's true, man. As your time as an instructor, I remember when I was an instructor and just like you said, you're not going to sign somebody off unless they're ready to go because you're putting your stamp of approval and your instructor wings, if you will, on the table when you say that somebody can go solo or go to the next phase. It's like, I approve of this. So yeah, well said. Anything stand out? You scaring yourself in the air? Oh man. Yeah. I remember one time in the T-38 specifically, remember how it was a death trap in the final turn, especially on a no flap, or what happened to me is rolling off the perch. So the perch being you're downwind of the runway and you make a turn 180 degrees to then drop in altitude and go land. Right. And so they call that the perch. And then the final turn in the T-38, as you know, is notorious for killing people in the final turn with, low airspeed or, excursions and angle of attack, pulling more, requiring more lift of the wing that it can produce. And so I rolled off the perch on what I thought was a full flap, configuration at full flap speed, but I had no flaps. And
I remember this.
It only lasted probably 3 to 4 seconds before I recognized that I forgot to lower my flaps because I needed to be probably 15 knots faster, something like that. And so thank goodness I had not applied a lot of backstick pressure and I recognized it and immediately just went around, plugged it in afterburner, sucked, said I'm going around and went around. But that got my attention, dude. I had a pit in my gut and was like, man, if I had pulled there at that slow of a speed for that flap configuration, could have gotten myself in a stall. And with those older ejection seats in the T-38, you're out of the ejection envelope. And so I would have tried to punch out, probably would have died. So
It happens all the time.
yeah.
You still see it in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy that they put students with 6-month flying experience in the T-38.
Right.
That's pretty wild. I think the next iteration will probably be a lot easier to fly, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Was the T7, I think, the Red Hawk? Or
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's just got a lot bigger wing, it looks like. A lot more lift.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they won't get that same opportunity that we did.
No.
Risking
It
your
won't get
life.
that same character building experience that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that experience for me was just incredibly stressful.
It was very stressful.
Like, I can't even articulate how that just crushing every day. Like, I look at my grade sheets now in the Navy. I didn't even realize it at the time, but the Navy grade sheets are like above average, like could work on these things, but overall kicks ass, like,
Right.
They're Navy guys. They're on shore duty.
That's right.
They're feeling pretty chill. And then the Air Force grade sheets are all just like the absolute worst I've ever seen on everything.
It's like, it's not personal. It's honest. You're like, whoa, it's pretty honest.
Yeah, you were awful. Like, they just like they've got no time to build you up.
No.
It's like we are here to train you. In 6 months, you're going to be a wingman,
Yeah.
in my fighter squadron if we let you through here. And they can't just let you slip through. You're going to be by yourself.
That's right.
And that transition, just getting your mind, calibrated to think that much faster was super challenging.
And then when you think back on it, though, that's the beauty of it, though. The purity is that, your instructors are not there to make you feel better about yourself. They're there to make you better, because that's what America needs, is qualified, warfighters. And so we're there to get you through, as instructors are there to get you through as quickly as they can, as best trained as they can, so that you can move on to the next phase and be useful. Like, 'cause you're not useful, right? In pilot training, you're not useful. You're being trained. So we got to get you useful. And sometimes that's painful to the person without a thick skin and a short memory.
Yeah,
Ability to compartmentalize.
it's like the analogy of like the refiner's fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it felt to me. Like, you are just getting melted down and then reformed.
That's right.
Out the other end into something useful.
Yeah.
But it's quite painful to experience.
It's painful. Yep.
I remember, do you remember Crash? Of course you remember Crash.
How can you forget Crash?
I remember one time, it was very early in the program, and I had a terrible sortie. And we get in the debrief, and I could just see he was angry. Like, he was super pissed. And then I did that ego thing, that ego protective technique that just is absolutely not allowed in a fighter squadron or a training squadron for that matter. But
sure,
I go, yeah, man, don't know what happened, but I did way better yesterday than and just had a bad day today. And like, he looked at me and he's like, dude, no one gives an F what you did yesterday. He just like
beautiful.
He raged on me. For
Nobody
like
cares
10
about
minutes.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
It's like, and that just like, it stuck in my mind. It changed me as a person.
Yeah.
You go from like somebody who wants to protect your ego to make excuses to, you get to the point where you're just like, I don't care anymore. You know, like there's no excuses. There's no anything other than what is your performance.
Yeah.
And once you kind of make that transition, that's when you start like actually figuring it out and being successful.
Yeah. I mean, it's human nature to do that. And I mean, we all still do it with different things at different times in your life. Like, you're never going to be perfect with going, thinking about previous performances or, reasons why, but there's always a reason why, but a lot of times it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No one cares. We don't have time.
At least in this line of work, it does not matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They care about what you actually did.
What did you actually do? Yeah, that's right. And because of training like that, it's actually that that's a great thing to have in your military career. And it's also a good thing to have in a civilian career, but you have to translate how you say that or how you teach it to others who aren't in a line of business that is that blunt.
Like your kids?
Like your kids. Or your wife.
Yeah. No one cares what you did yesterday.
That's right. Or your wife's or kids' friends, like I'm saying this because this has happened to me.
That's so funny.
I might have been corrected myself, from people that are close to me that I need to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah. You're like, hey, no one's going to die here today.
Yeah. The consequences of, your family member or close friend making an error, at home with something is not like, dropping a bomb on the wrong place or something with military. So I've learned some good lessons in life. And that's one of them.
Yeah. You got to wear a different hat every now and then.
Wear a different hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So you make it through T-38. You survive the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Were you worried at all at assignment night when you find out what your fighter is going to be? Or did you have any idea what you were going to get?
No, I didn't have any idea what I was going to get. If I remember right, I was probably right around the middle of the pack as far as, I think, what do we have, 8 guys in our class?
I think it was 6, actually.
6 or 8. So I can't remember, but I was somewhere around the middle of the pack to maybe just slightly below the middle of the pack on like grades. And so, man, I didn't know what I was going to get, but yeah, I was still concerned that I may not get either a fighter or the fighter I'd want, or, nothing is like bad, right? I just knew what I wanted. And so I was hoping for an F-15 or an F-16. And I was freaking nervous, man. I think I might've been a wreck, like waiting to see, what you're going to get. It was stressful to the last second.
Yeah.
Until they flash up behind you on the screen what you have, and you turn around and your whole world goes, and it explodes in a good way, I guess.
What was your number one choice on your dream sheet? Do you remember?
I actually wanted to fly the F-16. Was number 1 on my dream sheet. Number 2 was the Eagle, and so I got an Eagle, man. I got the F-15C, and so I was elated, absolutely elated. And so I just remember it flashing up on the screen, and then there was zero disappointment. It was just pure joy that I got my number 2 choice. So I was really happy with that. Yeah,
and that was one of the big 2 that since you're like 11 years old,
that's right.
Wanted to fly, right?
Wanted to fly one of those 2.
It's kind of like 1A, 1B probably.
That's right.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yep.
I remember the Eagle. At least my perception of the Eagle back then is that, like, if you want to continue getting your face kicked in training,
that was it.
Fly the Eagle.
Fly the Eagle, because they eat their young. Eagle pilots eat their young. It's like, I had several people come out that night and they're like, hey man, like, you got an Eagle. Good luck.
Yeah, you might be an Eagle pilot, but
you might be a
really good
pilot.
chance of washing out.
Yeah, you got a great chance. I remember we had 2 guys wash out last class. I'm like, thanks. I just got an Eagle, but thanks for telling me that. Appreciate it. I had no clue.
Yeah, it's super tough.
It was tough, man.
And then we're still together for a couple more assignment cycles.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Refresh my memory. Do we go to survival or do we go to IFF next?
Yeah, we got our wings, and then there was like a 5-month wait to go to IFF, Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals.
That's right.
And so we had our wings, and so we would sandbag flights. Remember that? We would jump in the back seat or try to get in the front. You got 1 flight a week, I think, in Z flight to keep your skills, and then anything else you could jump in the back or stuff like that. But anyways, to answer your question, in those 5 months, they first sent us to land survival at Fairchild in February, and it was really, really freaking cold. I remember that. And then they sent us to water survival the next month, and then they sent us to the centrifuge. Again, I had to pass the Eagle profile, and you had to pass the Hog profile. And so they did all that training within that time frame before they sent us to IFF down in Valdosta,
Do you
Georgia.
remember anything stand out from survival, land survival?
Yeah, them. I won't go into all the techniques that they use in land survival, but me being, put in small places and yelled at, and very cold. I just remember being very cold. And for some reason, they did not prep us with the gear. Either it was, again, us being dumb or not thinking about what the weather could be like in Washington State in February. But I remember the only boots that I had were my black leather Addison flight boots. And I think it got down to 10 degrees.
We're out in the woods, yeah.
In the woods, right? And so I think I had mild frostbite. I came back from that and my feet were numb, kind of tingly for about 3 months afterwards, and the feeling came back. But there's another lieutenant mistake, not thinking about what the weather was going to be like in northern Washington in February.
Yeah. Dude, I remember there was not very much food, and they gave us pretty much the same rations.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, for those who are listening, John's what, 6'4", 2?
Like 6'3"-ish, yeah. 6'3"-ish.
Yeah, like a big guy.
I'm not small.
And I'm like this wrestler who's used to cutting weight and
Yeah, you were doing just fine on those rations, and I think you were laughing at me because I was complaining about being so hungry.
I could see you getting thinner throughout the program.
I was so hungry, and you were like, "What are you talking about, man? This is easy." You had an advantage for sure. Yeah. With the small spaces and lack of food, you had an advantage.
I was fine.
I did not.
Yeah, that's something else we can hit on here too. A lot of people think that to be a fighter pilot, you have to be 5'8".
Oh,
that's
right.
not necessarily true. Isn't the max height limit 6'4"?
I think it's 6'5". I think it's 6'5" is the max height, but it really has to do, well, obviously that limit, but then the other ones are your sitting height. So your butt to the top of your skull, and then your hip length it's all for the ejection seat. And so I think I passed the sitting height by an inch. So I think it was a 41-inch sitting height. I guess it's still the same, but
they probably didn't send you to a Viper because the cockpit's tiny, huh?
I don't know, man. I know some big guys that have flown the Viper. It's just a tight fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, thankfully I had within at least an inch or two of the max measurements for hip to knee and sitting height, and I was well within the limits for overall height. So
yeah, what I tell people is there's a lot of short fighter pilots because a lot of guys just have a huge chip on their shoulder and want to prove themselves. They just happen to be short. And
nice.
That's where the stereotype comes from. But it's
right.
actually I've known 6'4", 6'5".
There's plenty of big guys out there. Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a limiting factor.
No.
And I've known even taller guys in that. And you're like, dude, how did you get in here? And he's like, yeah, I just hunched over really far during the official measurement.
That's right. Shave your head, whatever you can do to bend the limits if you can to get in.
Yeah.
I've heard many stories like that.
If someone tells you that you're out of limits, it's just
you're I'm going to figure out a way to make this work.
Yeah. Don't just accept that.
Right.
Because there might be a workaround.
Keep trying and trying and trying. Yeah.
All right. So, how was IFF? And what IFF is Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals. And it's kind of the last quality check for that student before they send them off to actually fly a major weapon system. So, it's in the T-38. It's 6 weeks, if I remember right.
Yeah, 6-8 weeks, something like that.
And it's just they're putting their eye on you one more time before they actually cut you loose.
Yeah, with an X-Acto, I remember it was very, your margins for error there were much lower. I remember one of the guys from our UPT class was there, and he ran the engines up, whatever you used to 80% or whatever it was in the T-38. So you run the engines up and you let everything stabilize, and then you release brakes and push the power up. And he ran it up, and his EGT was
So engine temperature?
Yeah, your exhaust gas temperature was 1 degree above what the normal ops limits were. but it was fluctuating. It would go like 1 degree above and then within, 1 degree above and within. And he waited for it to go back within, and then he released brakes and pushes it up. And then he felt the hand of the instructor pull the throttles back and hit the brakes and abort.
Yeah.
And he busted the ride.
It's no joke.
No joke, right? Within a fluctuating 1 degree. And it's like, nope, you're not taking that jet. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the level of precision. And I think it's also, it's a lesson, it's a lesson in knowing the jet's limits, but also your limits and following the rules and regulations. Because, I mean, let's be honest, like how many times have you done something like that, where it's 1 degree and then it goes back, stabilizes, but you've got way more experience in the jet. What are you doing? Is this a combat mission? Is this a training sortie? Like, what's the weather? So it's just a good lesson learned on, maybe as a young student like that, you don't really have the experience or the knowledge to make that decision to take that, multi-million-dollar plane, whatever, in the air. And so it's a good lesson learned. But later on down the road, maybe you can, understand your weapon system, and then, okay, I'm willing to answer the mail on this if somebody were to ask me or something were to go wrong. Right.
Yeah.
But when you're a lieutenant, you don't really have that option sometimes.
Yeah. Did you bust any rides in IFF?
I busted one ride for overG'ing. I overG'd, and that's just it's a known quantity. It's a 1 or a 0.
Yeah.
I pulled too many G's, and the jet yelled at me and said overG, and it's like, well, all right, we're done. So we came back home and maintenance inspected the jet, and it was fine, but it was a bust. So yeah, I busted one ride for overG.
Not bad.
Not bad. Yeah, I was okay with it.
Yeah. The psychology of the instructor cadre is really interesting. It's like, I feel like that first impression means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So like in pilot training, when we showed up in the T-38, we were kind of like behind. I felt like behind the power curve.
Yep.
So there's all this attention on us. Like, are they going to make it? They're behind. They came from the Navy, and the whole time you're kind of like suspect,
Yeah. Playing catch up. At least for me, it felt like, it was a 6-month program. I felt like almost half the time I felt like I was playing catch up. And then I felt like I was, on equal performance with everybody else in the class. Yeah.
And then in IFF, for some reason, I just like flew right through. I was like done in like 3.5 weeks, like just the way scheduling worked out. It was like, oh, you're good to go. No factor. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, it's weird how almost like the instructor cadre are like a pack of jackals, if they like sense weakness in
They're
somebody,
looking for it, man.
If they sense weakness, they'll just like start clawing at it.
Absolutely. Look for it and see what your limits are, right? And they're looking for lacks of knowledge, lack of ability, lack of respect, lack of humility. Like they look for all that. They look at the whole person concept, and that's a testament to, American instructor pilots, is that I think we do a really good job as American aviators, not just looking at the pure grade sheet performance, but looking at the whole person, and like finding what you're good at, but also finding what you need to work on and really focusing on that. I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of different countries. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
I've got something special to share with anyone who wears socks. That's all of us, right? As a fellow sock enthusiast, I can tell you that buffalo wool socks are my favorite socks of all time. They're comfortable, warm, breathable, and most importantly, they last. They're also a piece of American heritage, crafted from bison wool by a family dedicated to preserving the American Plains bison. They've been running bison for over 40 years. Each pair you purchase supports local ranchers and a great community. Visit buffalowoolsocks.com today and get yourself a pair. It's like, oh, you aren't good at this particular mission set or this. Okay, well, that's all you're going to do. And you're going to fly it with the hardest instructor for that.
Yes.
That area.
That's right.
And if you can't hack it, then this life ain't for you kind of
That's
thing.
right.
It's how it felt.
Yep.
So from here, you go to the F-15C.
Correct.
And you start flying the Eagle. So, so how was that training program?
It surprise again. Like it was intense. So 7-month course. And I'll never forget driving up to Tyndall Air Force Base for the first time. You've been in the T-38 and you feel like you're pretty good. And then you get to Tyndall and you look up and up initial, they're flying Eagles, Raptors. And I went and stood, on the flight line and looked out at just all the Eagles sitting there parked on the ramp. And the things, as is huge. I think it's, if I remember right, 63 feet long with a 42-foot wingspan and almost 19 feet high at the tail. And then when you sit in the seat, you're almost 10 feet off the ground. And so it's a huge jet. And so you go look at this thing and you're like, wow, like I've got a lot of work to do. That is a lot of machine that they're going to entrust me to go fly. But as far as the course, it was intense. Again, 12-hour days and other things in life really during this course really had to just stop. I love outdoor activities. I love fitness, and a lot of that stuff had to just really get curbed from time to time. You had to balance it. Any outside distractions, like whether you thought you were doing a good job with it in pilot training, even more so, I had to, buckle down and make sure I was studying and chair flying and being prepared. You know what I mean? Physically, mentally, all that kind of stuff. So it was a freaking intense program.
Was it
sure.
Another kind of screening process? Were they just looking for a reason?
100%, man. You're, from the whole person concept, how you fly jets, how you conduct yourself, in the squadron, because they're really trying to see if you're going to be like, a bro. Like when I say like bro, you know what that means, right? It's like, are you the kind of guy that they want to hang out with in the squadron at work, outside of work, around their families, like deployed? Like you need to be an upstanding, fun, person that you can get along with. And so it's obviously you want to be yourself, but there is a little bit of what they might be looking for. And so you got to play into that just a little bit. And everything's graded, right? Whether it's on a grade sheet or not, everything is graded.
They're watching
you, man, which is fine, which is why, in certain career fields, they build, warriors. You're going to be, that's what they want. It's a certain level of drive, a certain level of performance. And if you don't cut it, then not their problem.
Yeah.
And nothing personal, but it's just not their problem. So the flying was intense. The academics were intense, but dude, it was fun. Like flying the F-15, amazing machine. We like to say it was designed by God himself. And it really feels like that when you're flying. It's just an absolute pleasure to fly the machine, man. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
And this is like the single roll days too. So
That's
you
right.
are just nothing but an air-to-air guy.
Air superiority. So not a pound for air to ground. AMRAAMs, AIM-9s, and the gun, and 2 huge engines, 2 tails, and a bubble canopy. And you feel like you're on top of the world. And it's more power you know what to do with. And they call it the flying tennis court, right? You look, I just remember the first time I soloed it. Obviously, I remember the first time I flew it, but specifically the first time I soloed it. I know you take off, and when you get a chance to look over your shoulder, like you look over your shoulder and it's this huge gray jet back there with 2 tails and there's nobody behind you. And you're like, this is awesome. Like a spiritual experience with like, you're the only dude in this jet and you're in control of it. And it is a machine to behold for sure.
And what's wild about it too is you're in your like early 20s.
Yeah, man, I was 25 years old. 25 years old flying a F-15. And that's normal. It's not like I was abnormal. That's the age that you fly. Like I knew guys that were 24. I met, 24-year-old lieutenants that are flying this jet. So, I remember one time I think I was in the grocery store or something in my uniform, and some lady is like, what do you do? And like I tell her, well, I'm learning how to be a fighter pilot. She's like, you look too young. And I'm like, well, this is the age, man.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say the age, man, to the old lady, but I'm like it's hard to believe, but that's what America trusts their pilots to, well, they trust people as young as that age to fly fighters. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And you haven't even, you've been through a lot, but it hasn't been that long of a period of time.
Oh, right.
You're like,
no,
minus any breaks in training for just scheduling things. It's like, might be a year and a couple months since you walked in day one of pilot training.
Yeah. And you're just a couple years out of college. I mean, you think back to who you were 2 years ago to who you were now when you're flying the F-15, and like, you feel kind of like a different person with all the training you've been through. It changes you in good ways and bad, mainly good ways. But I think you find out like who you are as a person when you have to go through that training. And that's why, like, you and me, like, you build a really close friendship, because anytime I think people have to go through shared hardships and, blood, sweat, and tears, even if it's a short period of time, it really bonds people, which is, another wonderful part about, any high ops operations tempo, is that you become friends very quickly, lifelong friends. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Any like emergencies or anything crazy during that assignment, or just kind of like
in the B course emergencies, man?
Any
probably
like
something very
did
small.
you ever like feel that you might not make it?
No.
Did you ever get to that level, or did you just kind of truck through?
Yeah, I never felt like I wouldn't make it. I think I busted 2 or 3 rides, and I think I busted a sim, something like that. But no, I never felt like I wasn't going to graduate. I was able to keep up with everything and feel confident throughout the course, for sure. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be the top graduate, but I had no doubts that I would graduate the course. Yeah.
All right. So now you're 25-year-old combat ready.
Almost. Well,
oh yeah.
We had to go to our ops unit and then another 2 or 3 months of training to be combat ready. Right. What do they call it?
That's right.
IQ. Yeah. Initial qualification ready. IQT was the training we went through at the B course. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Dude, nothing feels quite the same as for me anyway, but I'll let you elaborate on it. But just showing up when you're done with all of that training, and you're like, no more grade sheets. Do you remember that? Like,
yeah, I remember. Yeah, after MQT, so mission qualification training, I went. My first assignment was Royal Air Force Base in Lakenheath in England, which was a dream assignment to go and fly air superiority jets in Europe. It was it was incredible. But yeah, you show up and then you're a nobody again, right? It's like you're the worst pilot in the squadron. As soon as you show up, you're the new guy, and then they put you through 2 or 3 months of mission qualification training, which is, as you know, like essentially 1 or 2 rides of each different mission set that the jet does. And then you have a certification ride with typically the squadron commander, and he, signs you off. And then now, like you said, you're ready to go to combat, and then you don't have grade sheets, at least on a continuation training sortie. You go out and fly with, somebody else in the squadron and you train, but then there's no official grade sheet unless you're going through an upgrade, which was great. I remember that. I think it was a basic fighter maneuvers sortie, but I went and did just a continuation training, a CT as they call it, BFM sortie, and it was glorious.
Yeah. It's like the first time since you started that there's not someone just over your shoulder.
Yep.
Critiquing everything to the nth degree.
Yeah. It's a lot of freedom, and you get to go really try the things that they teach you and actually get good at it, because you're not good at it when you first start, right? You've
just kind of seen everything, demonstrated basic proficiency.
That's right.
It's a long way to go to actually being good at it.
But yeah, it definitely felt like I've arrived. Like, I'm here. I'm finally doing it. I'm in the squadron. I'm flying a jet, and I don't have a grade sheet. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one thing that I didn't really expect is that as soon as you get to that point, you realize that you never really make it. There's no you get that moment of relief, like no grade sheet. Like I'm a fully combat ready, mission ready wingman, and then next thing you know, it's like another upgrade or another spin up, a check ride. It's something, and you realize like, oh man, like you still have to earn it every single day.
Every day. Yeah.
And there's no
Yeah.
You take a moment to kind of let up a bit, and then you realize like, oh,
Right.
there is no letting up.
There's no letting up. It's a freight train. I had one instructor tell me one time, it's like, be prepared for the freight train. What's the freight train? Well, the freight train means, dude, there's something always coming, right? And so it's great to let down a little bit, but you can't let your guard down completely because you're in the business of war fighting, right? You're in the business of, putting bombs on target or missiles or gun down range, and there's not a lot of room for error, and you have to continue to improve. And there's always, like you said, the next thing. And so that is part of what makes the job fun. The challenge. What's the next challenge? How can I get better? What's the next thing I can try to accomplish? And I used to look around, probably same as you, is like, what kind of pilot do I want to be? Mm-hmm. It's like, there's instructors that, you'd like to teach and then there's instructors that you don't really appreciate the way they teach. So, what works best for my learning, and how can I try to impart that learning when I'm an instructor to someone else in a way that they understand it. And so I always thought that part was rewarding, when you can really see somebody pick up what you're putting down, if you will, and the light bulb comes on, and you see the improvement, and then you go see them succeed. But that became a very fun part of being an instructor once I got to that level. It took years, obviously, but yeah.
So your next assignment is out at Lake and Heath. Yeah. So you're a combat ready, or soon to be combat ready wingman out at Lake and Heath. And is that where you met your wife too?
It is. Yep. I met my wife out to dinner with friends at Lake and Heath about 6 or 7 months after I showed up there. So
you're just top of the world, man.
Top of the world, dude. new Eagle pilot. Young lieutenant, slick wing lieutenant, fighting, different fighters all over Europe, and, ended up meeting my wife there at the same time, which is pretty awesome. So she was in the Air Force, active duty at the time, and we hit it off, and ended up getting married before we left England. So
you got married during that assignment?
We did. We got married about 9 months before we left the assignment.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
Yeah, it was really, it was special.
That had to be, just like an amazing time of your life.
Amazing time of your life. I mean, you literally, like you said, top of the world is a great description. I mean, like, you're living your dream, you're flying fighters, it's in a place you never thought you'd do it, and then you meet the love of your life there as well, and you're in Europe, and you're dating in Europe, and looking at different, going to different countries, with your girlfriend, fiance, then wife, and then, at the same time you're getting to travel with your squadron, all your buddies, and you just, life was fast and life was fun. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a really good time.
Dude, like everyone, I think every young man feels like called to adventure.
Yep.
And when you actually get to do it, and then you make it happen,
man,
and then you're living it, it's amazing.
It's
man.
Really cool. I'm just thankful for it. It was
anyhow. So you're at this point, you're basically living the time of your life.
I was living the time of my life, man. You're just, things are clicking, things are fun. You're with all your buddies, you're flying an amazing jet in an amazing place. And then, like I said, at the same time I get to, meet my future wife there. It's just super, super exciting. Yeah.
Did you upgrade to flight lead at that assignment?
Yeah, I did 2-ship flight lead and then 4-ship flight lead. And then I found out I was moving on to the F-22 after that. So I did not do any further upgrades kind of after that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. 4-ship and one assignment. That's fast.
Yep. Was not a first assignment instructor pilot. There were guys and gals that did that, but I did not. I was not a first assignment instructor pilot. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then so from there off to the mighty F-22 Raptor.
F-22, man. Dude, that was what a dream come true to get the opportunity to fly the F-22.
So what was that transition like, going from the F-15 to the F-22?
It was like everything that you wish you had in the F-15, you now have it in the F-22.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yep. It was like, you think you're in the world's best jet, and you kind of are, but then you fly the F-22 and you're like, whoa, dude, like this is everything that the F-15 is, but this massive leap in technology and capability that you only really find out about when you learn about what the F-22 can do and then go fly it. It just, the leap is just incredible.
So would the F-22 crush the F-15 head to head? Like not even close?
Not even close. I mean, the F-15 has a helmet. We wore a joint helmet mounted cueing system with the AIM-9X, which you can shoot at high off-bore side angles. And so if you're doing that and you're in a visual engagement, Raptor v Eagle, well, then the Eagle can be shooting missiles at the Raptor, simulated missiles, obviously. But as far as just the performance of the jet, turn performance, power, turn radius, the F-22 is going to eat up the F-15 eventually and get into a position where you can, employ the gun or something like that. So, the power and the performance it's really just eye-watering what you got in the F-22 for sure.
I mean, where was the transition, the TX training?
Back at Tyndall, back at Panama City, Florida, where I learned how to fly the F-15. Like when I went to fly the F-15, the F-22 was already there, and they were training pilots to fly the F-22 at the same time. So like while I'm flying the F-22, the F-15, I'm watching the F-22 fly going, dude, that looks pretty awesome. I'd like to do that one day. Yeah. So to have the opportunity to do it, man, was just a dream come true and a blessing. And, as far as what the transition was like, it was only a 3-month course because you're already a qualified fighter pilot flying F-15s. And so just the flying the jet is easy. It's learning how to employ a new fighter. But the F-22 flies at about the same speed the F-15 does. It just does different. It does things better. And so you're really just learning some of the specifics on how to fly that jet, but mainly how to employ it for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At least the TX and the Hog were always pretty enjoyable courses.
Yeah, it was a super enjoyable course. Like you're no longer hanging on the tails. You're like, I'm a fighter pilot. I get this stuff. Let me just learn some new things in a new jet. It was really an enjoyable course overall in the F-22 transition. Yeah, I liked it. It was great.
And what year is this?
2009.
2009.
So yeah, geez, dude, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. So you had been at it. That is a lot from start of pilot training all the way up to 4-ship flight lead in the Eagle. And then now flying the F-22. Yeah.
So 6 years from, start of pilot training from nothing to flying an F-22. So
that's not a lot of rest.
Not a lot of rest. And trust me, there was no rest for the weary, pretty much for the rest of my career being a fighter pilot.
Yeah. It never stops, right?
Never stops. It never stops. It never stops until either the decision is made for you to not fly anymore, whether that's medical or it's not you get a different assignment or you choose to put it away. But that is the beauty and the curse of, as you know, dude, of being a fighter pilot is that it is a sprint until you're no longer doing it because it requires that of you.
Yeah. Like what I tell people, at least for me, I can only get my experience, is that I could not be a fighter pilot and anything else good.
Dude, that's well said. You're right. You can't very well.
I couldn't be a good fighter pilot and like a marathon runner or a good fighter pilot. And frankly, it's hard to even, people make it work, but it's hard to be a fighter pilot and a good father.
It is.
A good husband.
It is, man.
It just
huge.
Consumes everything.
And as my wife likes to put it, when you're home, sometimes you're not there because you're so physically exhausted and you've given everything mentally, and then you're kind of emotionally checked out at times. And so it's like, you're home, but it's like, he's there, but he ain't there.
You're zonked out.
You're zonked out. And so it really does, man. It takes a lot from you, but that's what's required. And so you gladly do it. But at a certain point in your life, you have to make a decision whether you want to continue to be a really good fighter pilot, which, let's be honest, it's a young man's game, right? Your body starts to break down. Your neck starts to hurt. Your back starts to hurt. And from all the G's and looking around. And so, you can pretend to yourself that you're going to be the world's best fighter pilot forever, but you're not. And so you got to make that separation point where you decide to, put it away so that you can save something physically, mentally, emotionally for your family, because that's what's going to be left after you put the jet down. right? And you want to put it down at a time where, you go out on top and you don't go out like the old broken quarterback that decides he's going to, retire and then he's going to come back and then he makes, kind of makes an ass out of himself. It's like, let me go like when I'm on top, like, and let's not come back 3 times.
Yeah. Dude, how are you holding up physically at that time? Like, were you starting to feel some battle damage?
When I stopped flying the jet?
Or no, sorry. It's kind of that F-22 time frame.
Oh man, I was in great physical shape. I mean, like hardly any aches and pains. I mean, gosh, I was 28 years old, 29 years old. And so I was in my prime, man. Like
You're training, like lifting.
Oh yeah. Dude, lifting weights, running, just I'm big into fitness. And you really need that a lot to sustain the G's and the lifestyle. And so, the better condition you can be in, it's only gonna help you perform. Yeah. So you need that. But yeah, man, I was King Kong, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you're King Kong. Flying Raptors. I'm in great shape. I'm newly married. And so, I mean, like, life was good.
Absolutely.
Life was good.
So where did you go after the F-22 transition course?
I went to Elmendorf Air Force Base, which is now they call it J-Bear Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, but I went up to Anchorage, Alaska, and the 90th Fighter Squadron, the Diceman, and flew the Raptor up there for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Incredible assignment. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like flying in Alaska.
There's nothing like it, man. When you see those mountains and, you get to get down in them and fly around and, use the mountains tactically, look at the mountains for their beauty and just the amount of space you have up there. The airspace is the best in the world. So you can do things up there you can't do in a lot of places because there's so much surface of the earth, the air to do it in. So
yeah, the airspace up there is just incredible.
It's incredible, man. Surface to 60,000 feet, supersonic, hundreds of miles. And so it's really nice.
Dude, I went from Alaska to Korea. And I had no idea how good I had it in Alaska for training because that was my first fighter squadron. And then it was just like, man, this is terrible. Now I have no airspace. It's completely congested, nowhere to train. And it took me leaving Alaska to realize just how amazing that was just as a training range.
It really is. But then obviously, as you know, you have the elements to deal with in Alaska with the extreme temperatures, extreme light, extreme dark. So that matures you as an aviator with your airmanship and experience where you have to make decisions because of all those conditions that people flying in the desert at 90 degrees, clear skies year round, they don't have to deal with.
Yeah.
Right.
And did that take you to the end of your commitment, your active duty service commitment?
No, from there, I got an assignment to be a schoolhouse instructor. So where you learn how to fly the F-15 or the F-22, I got selected to go down back to Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida and be an instructor to teach new guys and gals how to fly the F-22. So the person that I was when I showed up to the F-15 basic course, ready to go, I'm now one of those instructors that teaches a brand new pilot training graduate how to fly the Raptor. So I did that for almost 3 years. And then from there, I elected to separate active duty for several reasons. One was my wife had separated. So we're joint spouse, and we want to start a family. And we knew that at some point the needs of the Air Force were going to take us apart, right? It's a gamble when you're both in the military and you want to try to stay together and raise a family and, a successful marriage. So she elected to get out first, and she was hired up in Alaska, and she would commute 4,000 miles. She would do with a brand new baby, my wife, we would work it out logistically to fly up to Alaska, drill for 2 weeks, and then come back, and she would do that once a quarter. And so I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a way where we can both serve and do what we want to do. And dude, let's be honest, you and me, dude, I'm not the leader. I'm not the stay in, be a general, be an 06 first, be a general, and like the leadership track for me, I just did not appeal. Like
miserable.
At best I would have considered being a DO or a squadron commander, but I wanted to fly fighters. I want to serve my country, build other fighter pilots, hang out with great Americans, and raise my family. So the reserves and the Guard allow you, as you know, to be in one location and still serve, not have to move, and you have a little bit more latitude to make decisions in your life for next civilian career, whether you're going to deploy or not, and things like that. So that appealed to me. The slick floors of the Pentagon and, shiny rank did not appeal to me. So
yeah, it doesn't sound very fun, does it?
No, that's why I didn't do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do it.
Okay, so now you punch from active duty. What year is this?
2015. So I separated from active duty and was hired by the 302nd Fighter Squadron back up in Alaska. And so we packed up our stuff and drove up to Alaska, which is where I finished my flying career up there.
Where did you, when you deployed to OIR, where was that out of? Like what assignment?
So I volunteered for that I was a reservist. So in Alaska, that was 2017. And I raised my hand to go deploy with the active duty squadron as a reserve member on orders and go employ the jet over there.
Okay. So that's coming up. Okay.
That's coming up. Yeah.
All right. So so now you're out of active duty.
Yep.
Your wife's off of active duty as well.
Right. Yep.
And now you guys, any kids yet?
2 kids at that point. Yeah. So one kid, and then around the time we were moving up to Alaska, my wife was pregnant, and then we had a second little boy, and then we're up in Alaska in the reserves, and staying put at least throughout the rest of the military career was a huge draw. So that was really nice. It's like, hey, we're both serving in a reserve capacity. I was full-time reserve. She was part-time. And then raising our family up there with some great people in Alaska. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then was that an operational unit up there, just kind of like defending the airspace kind of thing? So what were you guys doing out there?
Yeah, so kind of multifaceted. So that's up there in 3rd Wing. So we have 2 active duty Raptor squadrons and then 1 reserve Raptor squadron, which is the one I was in. And so it's called a classic associate unit. So the active duty owns the jets, and the reserves, we have our own squadron, but then we will augment the active duty. So, half the pilots in one squadron working with active duty, and the other half of our reservists working with the other squadron. And we have a mix of full-time reservists, part-time reservists who are airline pilots or have other civilian jobs, and then, do this job, 6-8 days a month in addition to their normal civilian career. And then there's also the North American Aerospace Defense component in Alaska. So there's an Air Operations Center. And so we would use the F-22 to essentially patrol the skies, if you will, from the Russians. So when the Russians would fly their Bear bombers within a certain range of our sovereign U.S. airspace, we would intercept them and follow them along their path. And, wave at them, all that good stuff, and make sure they went home the right direction.
Just go get actual visual with them.
Yeah, we get visual, we wave, take video, take photos, and, they're doing their power projection, and we do our power projection, and, you defend the homeland was part of the mission up there.
It's like a Cold War relic.
It really is. I mean, you're looking at a 1950s era, propeller-driven bomber that's flying thousands of miles, and I was just really glad I'm not the one having to fly in that thing.
Yeah. Dude, so not getting into any too specifics and anything, but a lot of people ask me how do our advanced 5th gen fighters stack up with our near peer adversary fighters? So say China, Russia. What's your honest take, just generally speaking, on how those stack up?
Well, we're still the best. That's what I know. We still have the best jets, the best pilots, the best training. I will say that the gap in capability has gotten smaller over the years with some of our near peer adversaries, and we're trying to continue to at least maintain, if not widen, that gap with our capabilities. But there have been, the war on terror kind of took a toll on some of our future capabilities, and that gap, for so long we were so much better than everybody else, but that war on terror in certain ways kind of made some of the advancements atrophy a little bit or not progress where they should have been progressing. And so we're doing fine with it, but it's to a place that it's not acceptable to us. And so we're really working hard to continue to widen the gap in technology. But, currently we're still number one.
Yeah, of course.
We're still number one. Yes. Is there a question? Let's be honest. What are we talking about right now?
Crush everybody if we have to.
Yes.
Just call us.
It's America.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, like, you've been there, right? You've deployed more times than I have, way more times than I have in 2 different airframes.
A few, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably remember this as well, but some fighter squadron commanders got fired and maybe a group commander as well.
I'm sure.
And they I remember they went through all the squadrons and you had to remove anything that could be even mildly offensive.
Mildly offensive.
They're pulling down World War II art pinups that are on
pinups because
people's,
it had a pinup on it. Yeah.
Just anything. And then I don't know if it was permanent or what, but it felt like at that point it kind of, there's this overarching HR department over your back,
Yeah.
Where inside the fighter squadrons you feel pretty safe to be yourself, you know, but
you should feel safe when you're in that environment.
Yeah. I mean, these are warriors, you're going to fight and potentially die together.
That's right.
To be able to, might not be the biggest problem in the world if you drop an F-bomb, but
right. I just don't appreciate it when it's not certain people's world that they want to try to come into different, squadrons, units, whatever the term you want to use. But when there's a group of guys and gals that when they're working and doing something that only a few people do in America, that is extremely important, that it needs to be done for America, let them do it, right? Leave them alone. They're not breaking the law. They're doing their job. Sometimes they like to work hard and sometimes they like to play hard. And there's camaraderie and there's tradition and there's fun. There's even a little bit of hazing. That's okay, right?
Yeah, it's in love.
Leave them alone, man. Leave them alone.
I know, man. I agree.
Leave us alone.
Yeah, well, that's cool. So, sorry for that tangent, but getting back on track. So now you're a reservist and you're an IP in the Raptor.
Yes.
Is this you got kids, family, and then you pick up that deployment to OIR?
Yes.
So, dude, that deployment, that whole time frame, I know what the A-10s did. I know a little bit about what the other platforms did, but that was wild, man. What can you tell us about that experience?
Oh man, it was just, well, honestly, we never expected to kind of be there as the F-22. We were deployed to that location strategically. And so when we were there, everyone else is dropping, weapons on terrorists. Oh,
right? Just to frame this conversation, can you kind of describe what was going on a little bit, geopolitically?
Yeah. So it was, ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, sometimes called ISIL. They were trying to develop or build a caliphate over there in that region. And for certain reasons, it kind of got out of control. And so the U.S. and coalition partners stepped in to stop the terrorist acts and the potential building of, a caliphate, which is what they wanted. So we stepped in with the coalition to stop it.
And this was early Trump, and then Mattis was in command, or Mattis was SecDef at that time. Is that right?
Yep. Trump and Mattis. This is January. This started a couple years before that, but this is in 2017 when I went over there.
Okay.
We were, employing versus, ISIS over there in Iraq and Syria.
Yeah, I remember just the A-10s just cleaning up over there.
House.
Just every sortie.
I'll tell you
cleaning off the wings, emptying the gun.
The A-10s and the Strike Eagles did some incredible amount of dropping bombs and shooting. They did the brunt, of the air to ground dropping. The F-22 was just a very small, very, very small piece of that. I was lucky to get in and do a little bit of, putting weapons on target and stuff like that. But our capabilities, at least in that, in in that environment aren't really what the F-22 is designed for. We have a very small capability in that air-to-ground region, but it's still a GPS-guided weapon and a very accurate system. And so we would go in and
jets,
drop some fast
and
jets,
high.
and we would go in and drop some bombs. Yeah, so that was fun. That was
Get to go crush the enemy a little bit.
Yep, I would say it's rewarding to say the least. Yeah. It was rewarding.
I want to take a moment to say thank you to each and every one of my Patreon supporters. Your support is what keeps the podcast going, and I couldn't do without you. Now, if you want your very own signed 30 millimeter casing, sign up for my Patreon, silver tier or above, and I will send you one. I've got a few more set aside for that purpose. Well, that's cool. You got to go, do the job for real.
It was, yeah.
Fire and anger a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, very small, especially with the Eagle, all air superiority, right? So you're, at least now, it's more of a deterrence. We haven't had a big shooting match in a long time, right? I mean, the Eagle has 104 kills and no losses, but it hasn't happened. Air-to-air kills haven't happened in a long time, at least for the Air Force and the Eagle. And the Raptor is designed as an air dominance fighter. 5th generation stealth technology. Mainly air-to-air, some air-to-ground capability, but as far as a close air support platform like the A-10 and the F-15E, that's not what we're designed for.
Right.
Yeah. So we can drop on coordinates, but we can't do a lot of the finding things and dropping and getting low and doing the stuff that you guys do, getting in the dirt.
Yeah. Anyhow, what'd you think about having that more of a multi-role capability? Did it detract from the air-to-air mission at all?
I guess one, did I like it? I would say initially, I felt like it's okay. Came from the Eagle, so I was very much, beating my chest air to air. At Raptor's even better air to air, and so I much preferred the air to air training. It's more it's just more dynamic. That's what I felt like my job was, and so I think a lot of times I would take the air to ground training as kind of an annoyance.
Yeah.
At times. And I didn't prefer it, but to get to go drop some weapons and employ it, it was great. Right.
Right.
So I have nothing against it. I would much rather go into an air to air shooting match because I feel like that's what I'm trained to do. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm better at. But did I go enjoy dropping bombs and taking care of, the job? Yeah, absolutely. A totally rewarding experience. I loved it.
What do you think of the F-35?
I think it's a good aircraft. I know it's had problems, but obviously I've never flown it. I've had friends that fly it, and I know it's, continuing to get, upgraded. And so, between the F-22 and the F-35 working together, that's a pretty lethal machine as we work together towards whatever type of threat we're going up against. So, yeah, I mean, it's got some great air-to-ground capabilities that we don't have. It's got some similar air-to-air capabilities. It's a stealth platform just like the Raptor is. It's not the same level of, it doesn't carry the number of air-to-air weapons that the F-22 does. And so the F-22 is still kind of the big dog, if you will, in the air-to-air regime. And then the F-35 is more of a air-to-ground suppression of enemy air defense type of platform. Yeah. Just different mission, but equally capable in what it's designed to do. Yeah,
that's how I see the F-35 is an epic seed platform.
It is. Yeah, it's really good
and with good air-to-air capability. Yep. And my beef is when they want to replace the A-10 with the F-35.
What can you replace the A-10 with?
All right, so my only gripe with the F-35 is when they talk about replacing the A-10 with it for the close air support mission.
Yeah, no, it can't. There's nothing that can replace the A-10 for that mission.
Yeah, but I think it does have a lot of attributes that are often overlooked because it's so darn expensive. Yeah, and it had it's definitely a bit of a money grab in the developmental process. It seems it's like John Boyd would be rolling over his grave maybe a little bit with
Davey, a firefighter only with a gun.
Yeah, with all the
no gold plating. That's right.
they gold plated it maybe a
plating.
little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be it's capable for what it was actually designed to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope that all the developments happen the way they're designed to happen, so that it is what they want it to be. You know what I mean? Because there's all these different phases of upgrades, and I hope it gets there quicker than other jets and their upgrades, because a lot of times those are delayed, and that's bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. So now you're like this old graybeard F-22 pilot in the reserves. I mean, at this point, instructor pilot. What are you doing now? Like flying operational missions, upgrading young guys kind of stuff?
Yep. Just flying every now and then, some alert, and then mainly just being a line instructor, teaching, getting people combat mission ready, upgrading to the next thing, whether it's 2-ship, 4-ship, instructor pilot, mission commander, just continuing to teach and build the next generation, essentially.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And 3 kids now?
3 kids now, so 2 boys and a little girl.
That's awesome. Ops tempo slow down a little bit for you?
I mean, I guess only by choice, if you will, with being a reservist and being able to kind of control a little bit more of your life with how much you have to fly the minimum number of times, but you don't have to put yourself up for a lot more than that unless you want to or it's available. And then trying to control, when you say yes, when you say no. Sometimes you can't say no, but trying to balance your family life with your work life is a little bit easier at times as a reservist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when, I'm sure you remember the Chinese weather balloons that were flying over? You like F-22s are balloon busting now. Like what was that like in the squadrons?
Well, to be honest with you, I did not spend a ton of time in the squadrons when that happened because I had stopped flying the F-22 at that point. But I would go over there and see. I was working in an air operations center at the time on base, so I got to be privy to a little bit of how they detected these balloons and things like that. And so, a lot of frustration with. I'm not going to get too much into it, but timing of when we can engage the balloon. Things taking a little bit longer than they should have. It's frustrating. A lot of people. So
were guys like wanting to go crush the balloons, like throw back to like World War I balloon busters? Was it kind of fun?
Not again, like I wasn't in the squadron a lot when that happened, but I know that they were ready. They were ready to get the task done when they were tasked, just like they would be with anything, whether it's a balloon or not. The beauty of it is when we're given something to do, we're going to go do it 110%. So that's what I know that happened. Whether the jokes and paint balloons on the side of your plane instead of enemy fighters, right? That part is humorous, but I mean the bottom line is the guys went out and got the job done.
Dude, I almost got to shoot down a balloon once in Afghanistan.
What? I never heard this story.
Okay, I'll make it quick. But a PTIDS balloon, so one of those, it has like a bunch of cameras, and they looks like a Goodyear blimp, and they fly them above bases in the Middle East, and they use it for just observation for base security. I was just flying armed Overwatch, not much going on. I think it was Fob Ghazni, and it like came detached, and it was just floating towards Pakistan. And they came up on the horn and were like Hog 01, like if this thing gets within this distance, we're gonna have you shoot it down.
Did you engage it?
So I'm like, yes, that'll be fun. I'm gonna just dive from the sun and just smoke this thing. And as I was waiting for permission to do so, it crashed into the mountains. And so
problem solved, but not in the way that you were hoping for.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to shoot a balloon down. But then, and then now we're like, bringing in the QRF to go get the cameras and stuff. But anyhow, I almost got a chance
to shoot a balloon down.
A balloon. That's my whole story.
There's a couple people out there balloon kills in the Raptor. That's true statement. Yes.
All right. So, now you're like a gray beard in the squadron.
Getting there. Losing hair and turning gray for sure. Yeah.
Feel that. How are you holding up physically at this point?
Starting to get some aches and pains where I definitely in my neck and my back, where I have to limit the number of times I'm flying or limit what I'm doing flying, like less basic fighter maneuvers, like less BFM where I'm pulling 8-9 Gs a lot because I hurt afterwards. Part of the discussion and being a fighter pilot is a young man's game for sure. So, what you do in the jet, your body's not really designed to do that, cranking your neck around and you're wearing 40 pounds of gear and you're pulling 8-9 Gs and you're looking over your shoulder and just the constant, extreme pressure that your body takes. I mean, it's not designed to
It's completely unnatural.
It's unnatural.
It's like you're designed to run, hinge, lunge, jump, all these natural movements.
Yeah.
You're not designed to like strap 10 pounds to your head and then be compressed.
Twisting under force and being compressed. Yeah, not designed, but we do it and it does take a toll. I mean, just like you, I know a lot of guys and gals that have disc problems, and I think you have disc problems, and I've got degenerative arthritis in my neck now and my back. And so, yeah, it's great, man.
Do you have any regrets? Would you?
It's totally worth it.
I agree. I do it exactly the same.
Totally worth it.
I do it exactly the same again.
Service comes at a price. Loving what you do sometimes comes at a price, and it's manageable. The pain and discomfort is manageable, but yeah, it's taken a toll on my body.
Dude,
for sure.
No one lives forever.
Nobody lives forever. If you're going to live, you might as well live awesome.
Absolutely. Oh, dude. So you had a real setback in Alaska. So
yeah, I did, man.
Like your story up to this point, from what my vantage point is setting goals and achieving them, setting goals, achieving them.
Yes.
And then it's kind of hard to even talk about, but as we both know, you were diagnosed with cancer.
I was.
And if you can just talk me through kind of how you came about the diagnosis and just, what that did to you really.
Oh man. Well, I guess the first thing you said was a setback. And at the time when you get a cancer diagnosis, I mean, at least for myself, you experience the gamut of emotions and feelings, right? And at the time it felt like a setback, but now I actually look at it as a blessing. I don't look at it as a setback. I look at it as I'm thankful for the experience of it. I'm thankful. Obviously I'm thankful I'm alive, but kind of, defeating it, and learning about yourself and about life and about, things didn't necessarily, things maybe you took a little bit for granted, but now you don't. It's a blessing. So I don't consider it a setback. But to answer your question, the how I found out was kind of random, really. I mean, I always been healthy, clean bill of health, and love to exercise, love to be outside, love to be active in whatever capacity I can be in. But I found out taking a shower. I found out I had a lump in my groin, and at the time I kind of didn't think anything of it. I was just like, maybe I strained something working out. Maybe it's something going on that'll subside. And so that is initially what happened was I had a lump in my groin. And then, a couple of weeks go by and it's still there. But everything else is normal. Like,
feel fine.
Energy is great. Feel fine. No issues sleeping. No night sweats. No changes in mood. Like nothing. Everything felt code 1, if you will. Everything was great. Code 1. But then I noticed on my other side, I started developing another one. And so I go, okay, this is a little weird. Let me go get this checked out. So I scheduled a meeting with my flight doc. And before that, I noticed I had athlete's foot. And so I go, like, is the athlete's foot, because it's kind of like a bacterial infection, like is the athlete's foot causing my lymphatic system, excuse me, to react and cause inguinal swelling? And so maybe let me do the Google machine. So I do the Google machine, and sure enough, it says, yes, it can cause swelling in your lymph nodes. So I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. I won't go help my boys take a shower after swim practice again without flip-flops on. Rookie mistake, right? I was like, dude, why did I do that? Like, now I have athlete's foot. I know better. And so kind of being an athlete growing up, I was like, I do my standard thing, like use a tough actin, tenactin, like, but I'm lazy about it. And I also go see the flight doc. So I go see the flight doc. And I'm like, hey doc, like, here's what I got going on. What do you think? And he's like, yep, it could be athlete's foot, but let's get a couple tests. So I did a blood test, and it came back negative for anything abnormal. Urinalysis, negative for anything abnormal. But he's like, let's get a CT scan too. So we went and got a CT scan of my abdomen and things like that. And he could see some lymph nodes in there that were swollen, but he's like, like it's, at least from his perspective, inconclusive, because he's not a radiologist or, anything like that. So I kind of go about my daily life and routine with the swelling. And then I notice a couple weeks later, this is probably end of October of 21. And by end of November of 21, my left leg started to swell up. My shin specifically, where I started getting edema in my left leg, where I could push on it and the thumbprint would stay there. So I was like, this is really weird. And then also underneath my eyes started swelling. And so of course I'm like, is this just what it's like in your 40s, dude? Like, you start to look like hell,
just
and you
fall apart.
You get swelling and you're falling apart. I'm like, okay, maybe it's my 40s. But so I go back to the doc and I get the same test. He's like, all right, let's take a look at this again. So same test again, all inconclusive. In the meantime, I'm feeling great. I'm flying, no issues. But we're getting ready to go on a trip to Hawaii for 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, he's like, let me give you some stronger, some stuff that, like prescription level stuff, stronger stuff for your athlete's foot. And so I'm perfect. There's going to be prescription stuff, sunshine, surf, salt water, all that stuff is going to be great. It's going to kill the athlete's foot. And so, we go, to the beach, and within a week that, process clears up the athlete's foot, but nothing is better. Like, my facial swelling started to be worse. Leg swelling started to be worse. Like, things are not looking good, and it's starting to be a little bit painful. And so I'm like, this is not good. Let's go see the doc as soon as we get back. So we go see the doc, and he goes, at this point, we're going to have to get a biopsy to figure out what's going on. I was like, I can't give you any more info. He's not an expert in that area. So they schedule a meeting with the surgeon, and I go see the surgeon for a consultation, and he takes the CT scan and he pops it up in the little, thing that's backlit. And we look at that thing, and he's like, hey, you see all these lymph nodes? And he goes, I was like, yep. And he's like, I shouldn't be able to see a single one on the CT scan. And by this point, I kind of narrowed it down, between myself and the flight doc of, it's bacterial infection, it's autoimmune, it's cancer, or it is undiagnosed. We don't know what it is, right? So I look at the doc, I'm like, is this cancer? No, doc. And he's like, I just need you in surgery tomorrow morning. And I'm like, okay. So I went into surgery, they put me under, and they took out a lymph node about 3 inches in length and about 1.5 inches in diameter. And then it came back a week and a half later that it was B-cell lymphoma. Yeah, so non-Hodgkin, ended up being non-Hodgkin lymphoma, specifically grade 1 to 2 alpha follicular non-Hodgkin lymphoma, stage 4, grade 1 to 2. So stage 4 meaning it's throughout your whole body, and then it's in your bloodstream as well, in your bone marrow. So yeah, and then from there it's like, okay, holy crap, dude! Like, I've got stage 4 cancer, and how are we gonna treat this?
How did you tell your family? Like, what was that like?
It's kind of funny how my wife found out. So I'm downstairs. The way I found out was not the way it was supposed to happen. So I got a call from a department in the hospital asking about referring me to an oncologist off base. And so, but I hadn't gotten a call from the surgeon or any of my flight doc. Just like, hey, Lieutenant Colonel, Deloney, are you going to be, we're trying to refer you to oncologists off base. And I'm like, okay, like I, was, wanting to get this information a different way. Like, okay, let me stop. Let me call the docs. And then I called my surgeon. I'm like, hey man, I just got a call from the department asking about oncology. And he goes, he's like, that wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to call you. Turns out, he's like, you have B-cell lymphoma. And I was like, what? But I had the phone on speaker, and my wife was upstairs cooking dinner, and she heard me talking to the doc, and it started to make her way down the staircase, and kind of heard as it's happening that I have cancer. And so we're like, this just happened. Like, holy crap. Like, what do we do now? And so we hung up the phone, and we're just pretty like stunned, as I'm sure anybody would be. Yeah, so that is how I found out.
How quick did you go from kind of initial processing of it to kind of learn about the treatment? And
very quick. It was probably, and according to the surgeon and my oncology team, like it was one of the quicker from diagnosis to start of treatment that, it went very well. It's from the diagnosis to being able to get the treatment started as fast as I could. So, the initial diagnosis was on, I think, the 4th of January of 22. And then I started treatment on the 1st of February. So just, 3 weeks later, I started the treatment. And obviously you have the initial shock of finding out that you have cancer. It's like, am I going to survive? Like, where am I going to get treatment? Am I going to stay here in Alaska? Am I going to go to Houston? Am I going to go to San Diego? Am I going, like, what am I going to do as far as, number one, surviving, but two, how do I take care of my family the best way possible? So it's like, am I going to uproot my kids from school? Are we going to move? So all of that discussion was extremely stressful. Like, how are you going to work this thing? And so they referred me to, Alaska Oncology Hematology off base in Anchorage. And Dr. Stephen Liu was my oncologist. Dude, he and his team are incredible. And so we went and had a consultation with him, and he is like, I can treat you here in Anchorage. And I'm like, that's what my wife and I were like, it'd be great if we didn't have to uproot our lives. He's like, I can do the same treatment here that we could do essentially anywhere else. Like, your type of cancer is a treatable type of cancer with potentially good results. And so we're like, okay, like, let's do this here. And it was originally going to involve chemo and then radiation, or anything else that was left. And so my wife and I are at home, and this is on either a Thursday or a Friday, I can't remember. But he texts me. He's like, I've got a clinical trial for you that we could do instead of chemo. And I'm like, okay, tell me about this clinical trial. And so he directs us to where to look at this paperwork, kind of some scholarly articles and clinical trial studies, and then specifically what this thing involves. And so what this stuff is, dude, it's like it's a super soldier miracle drug is what I called it. But it's a monoclonal antibody called mosunetuzumab. And human beings are incredible that they can do this stuff, right? So it's instead of being chemo, it's a series of shots. And it is a 1 milliliter subcutaneous shot that they inject usually in your thigh. And what this stuff does is it tells the T cells in your body to move closer to the cancerous B cells and attach themselves to the surface of the cancerous cells and kill it. And so this stuff is, it is a kind of like, I guess I'm probably saying this, Dr. Lou would probably laugh at me, but it's a natural way. So it's chemo being poison, this stuff uses your own body's immune system, but kind of like an assist in basketball, it helps the cells go to where they need to go and fight the cancer using your body's own immune response, which is pretty incredible. And so the funny part was that in the trial wording paperwork, it says that this drug involves dual precision targeting of the cancer. So I looked at Heather and I'm like, we're done, right? You know what this means. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, because they just said dual precision targeting. I'm like, this is my language.
I'm going to destroy.
Am I going to read the rest of this article? Like, I don't even need any more information. Like, doc, sign me up, right?
Yeah.
So my wife was smart and made us read the rest of the paperwork smartly, right? So we read all this stuff, and this was like a Friday. And it's like, hey, we need an answer, early next week to get you started. We could start you as early as 1 February. And so we read the paperwork over the weekend, kind of a stressful weekend. And then we're like, all right, like we're all in. And so you had to meet all these inclusions. And so we kind of really felt that God was putting this in our lap and going, hey, this is your ticket to survival. Like, as well as, if I signed up for this trial, I'd be the first person in America to do this trial as a frontline treatment. Like, they'd used it on secondary and tertiary, like refractory cases of cancer where like elderly and their bodies can't take any more chemo because it's going to kill them. And they used this stuff and it cured them in a majority of the cases.
Is this like the future of fighting cancer?
And for blood cancers like lymphomas, like follicular lymphomas, that is the goal. Is they want to use this drug as a replacement to chemo and radiation. So the FDA has these clinical trials that they want to, very specific timelines and subcategories to go, hey, it worked or it didn't work, and we need a certain number of percentages for it, to approve this. But yeah, they want to approve this stuff as an FDA. You get shots instead of chemo and stuff like that. So. But to circle back, so I had to go get a physical to make sure, all certain areas were, my body could take the treatment. And it had to, I had to essentially the demographics that they wanted. Thankfully, my body fit the trial and I signed up for it. And so I started getting this treatment. They had to fly it in, and they had it, there at the oncology office, and you would get the shots in the office. And so the first treatment was 1 shot, 5 milliliters that they would give you. And then you get a shot every week for a month. And then after that, it's every 3 weeks. And then they have an agent, I can't remember the name. I think TOSI, they called it. But essentially when you get this shot, it can elicit a response in your body called cytokine release storm, which could potentially be fatal if it gets to a certain level. So they have this drug that reverses that stops the process, but it sends all the cells in your body. I'm using loose terms here, fighter pilot terms. I don't know all the doctor terms. I didn't stay at Holiday Inn Express last night, so I don't know. But anyways, it drives stuff nuts in your body, and so it'll put you in the hospital, which it did for me the first 2 times. I had to go to the hospital. It gives you like flu-like symptoms. But it can progress and be fatal. So they send you to the hospital for observation, and they have that drug on hand if they need to use it. Thankfully, it did not. Mine did not progress aggressively. But then after those first 2 hospital stays, and after that, the drug kind of reaches a level in your body where your body gets used to it, and then you get it every 3 weeks. And the nice part about it is your quality of life can be amazing with it. So I would get the shot, and I would be really tired for like, a few days, where I'd sleep like 20 out of 24 hours. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, your body's working overtime with at the cellular level. Right. And so I would be super tired, a little achy, joints and stuff like that. But then after that, man, I had a normal quality of life. Like, I could go hiking, I could go camping, I could exercise. I just could not fly jets. So they took me out of the cockpit, which was kind of the devastating part. Is like, hey, am I going to get to fly again? With my military job and civilian flying job, like what's going to happen? Is the military going to approve me to fly? Is the FAA going to approve me to fly? Like, what's my life going to look like down the road? But as far as the drug goes, I mean, I was super thankful for the treatment because it allowed me to, one, not lose my hair, not lose my eyebrows, which, I was willing to do. And cancer patients around the world to tell you that, yeah, that's a small price to pay for surviving, right? But the quality of life that allowed me to have was amazing. Yeah.
Easier on your body than chemo and radiation.
Yeah. Essentially no long-term effects, no long-term side effects, which is nice.
Yeah. So just what was like your mindset at that point? Was it, did you fall into despair at all? Like, I mean, was it a roller coaster?
It was a roller coaster, but as far as to answer your question about despair, no way. Like I could not go there. Like you can't go there, right? I mean, like your first initial thoughts are like, am I going to live? Am I going to get to walk my daughter down the aisle at her wedding? Am I going to be there for my wife and kids? Like, I'm not afraid of dying, but like, I'm not ready to go yet, if I can avoid it. But yeah, man, like when I found the news out and you initially kind of go through those short bouts of ups and downs and, you're with your, thankfully Heather was there and, you have your emotional times and you're angry, you're sad, all that kind of stuff. But it's like, no, man, like you got to go to work. Just like, being a fighter pilot. And I've said this before to people, but they took me out of the jet. Right. And so I could not fly the jet and do the mission that I love to do, and defeat the potential threat that I was trained to deal with all my life. Right. But now the threat's not external. The threat is inside my body. So I've got to defeat the threat inside my body and survive. And I can't fly a jet to do it, but my mission isn't flying a jet right now. My mission is surviving, right? So I literally took the same mindset, whether that is healthy or not. At least for me, it's what made sense. And I think for me, it was probably the healthiest thing is like, I'm just going to treat fighting cancer like I treat fighting a threat, in training or in real world and flying the F-22 or the F-15. And so I just literally went into it with a very determined mindset, and maintaining that mindset was tough over the course of the treatment. But again, it's like you compartmentalize and you surround yourself with, faith and family and your friends and your network and you fight it. And so that was my mindset going into it, man. That's a huge part of what kept me, healthy and alive in my mind.
Man, that's heavy.
It's heavy, right?
Yeah. It makes you think,
Yeah.
So that treatment obviously was successful.
Yes.
And so how did that play out? So you go through your course of treatment, and then now you're kind of in a waiting game to see how the prognosis looks. Like what's that look like?
Yeah. So the treatment that I had was initially going to be a year, but then there was a caveat, like at the 6-month point, if my cancer was down to a certain level of, they call it burden, then they were either going to continue with the treatment or stop it if it was gone, or they call it a complete response. And so I would get those shots every 3 weeks. And at the 3-month point, they send you in for scans. So a CT scan, a PET scan where things light up and it shows how much cancer is inside your body. It's like a 3D like image of everything internally. And after the 3-month point of the treatment, those are almost at like gone. So 3 months in, all the lymph nodes were down to like almost not visible. And then the PET scan was almost at a score of 1. And so it's like this stuff is working. And then my facial swelling was gone down. I could feel the lymph nodes in my body. They had reduced in size. And so it's like this stuff is working like at a rapid pace. And so it's like, okay, we're going to keep going to the 6-month point and see where it looks. And so we went to the 6-month point and everything was totally gone, dude. Totally gone.
Wow.
And then they do a bone marrow biopsy where they kind of drill into the back of your pelvis. It's not super bad, but it's also not super awesome. I like
Wouldn't recommend it.
Wouldn't recommend it just on a Friday night for fun.
Yeah.
And so they do that and the test, look at your bone marrow and dude, clear. Everything was clear after 6 months. So the drug killed non-Hodgkin lymphoma in 6 months with a complete response. Nothing left.
Dude, that's amazing.
Amazing, right?
So that had to just give you a new lease on life.
New lease on life, man. I found out right after I went on a fishing trip with my boys in Alaska, and we limited out on salmon and came back, and my oncologist called me and the boys were in the backyard playing, and Heather and I were out front, and he told us the news, man. And I just Heather and I hugged each other, and I went and it was a beautiful sunny Alaska day, sun shining, like one of the days that makes you want to live in Alaska forever. You're like, this is incredible. But I just laid down in the front yard, man. I was just laid down. I was just like, thank you, God. I was like, thank you for this. So it was a really, really cool moment. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, that just had to be such a just heavy experience to go through from the start to the end.
It was, man.
And never the same again.
Never the same again. And then it was like, what's next? So it's like my mission wasn't done. Like I told my wife, my 3 goals were: number 1, I was going to try to survive. Number 2, I wanted to protect my family financially, with, money, insurance, all the benefits that I'm allowed via the military and my civilian job. Like, how do I maximize those? And then the last one was twofold. A, I wanted to get back in the F-22. And then B, I wanted to get back flying for my airline company. And by the grace of God, I did all 3, did all of them. Survived, protected my family, and then got back in both. Yeah, so pretty happy, pretty thankful.
So make it back to the jet. What does that feel like?
Yeah, dude. So I was out for 358 days. And after 365, I would have needed a formal retraining course, a TX course in the F-22. And I'd already told Heather, it's like, if it goes past that point, I'm pretty sure I don't want to go.
You're not going to training at this point.
I'm not going to go to training.
Like a 20-year lieutenant colonel.
It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But man, to be able to get back into it a week before that expired, that was pretty special.
Wow.
And so I had some great people around me. My ops group commander in the reserves was incredible. My squadron commander was incredible. And then all the guys and gals in the unit that I was in at the time were nothing but supportive, helped me in every capacity, whether that's legally, whether that's, just motivating me, whether it's, checking in on me, whether it's, going to bat for me. They did it all and helped me survive.
Dude, great leadership is so important.
Yep.
It makes a difference.
It made a huge difference. And so, they protected me. And then I tried to stay in the F-22 simulator. I would go initially, maybe once a month or something like that, just to kind of keep things going, while I also tried to focus mainly on surviving. I would every now and then I'd try to go to the sim. And then when I got the news that I was cancer free, then I started to go back to the sim just a little bit more. And then I put in for a waiver to Wright-Patterson, to have the flight doc write that waiver to try to get requalified. And they sent it back a few weeks later, and they're like, "You're approved."
Wow.
And so I went and got a new medical clearance letter from my flight doc, and boom, here it is. And then I did a quick respin up in the sim. And then I did one flight with one of my buddies who's an evaluator. And that was incredible, man. Just taking off again after almost a year and beating cancer. It's like, I did it.
Yeah.
I did it, dude. Me and the team did it. My family, my faith, my friends, all the guys and gals in the unit, we did it. And I beat it, and I got back in the jet. So that was a huge day I'll never forget. So yeah. It was good, man.
That's
good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's just it's one of those things, it might be if you're flying your whole career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're 18 years in, what's one sortie? Nothing, right? It's just another day at the office.
Just another day.
But then when you almost lose everything
Yeah.
Just to get back in the air, that just had to mean so much.
It meant a lot, man. It meant a ton, because to use the words of one of my old ADOs back when I was flying F-15s in England, he told me, he's like, hey, he's like, there's going to come a day when it's going to be your last fighter sortie, whether that is by your choice or not, you don't know. So it's like every time you climb up the ladder, you got to look back at that jet and look how awesome it is, and just, pinch yourself that you're flying it, because you don't know if this is your last sortie. Right. So I thought that was me. That I didn't want to be the one that didn't know it was my last sortie. But as soon as I found out, I'm like, I remember the last time I flew was on the 17th of November. And I'm like, that could have been my last sortie, but I didn't know it.
Right.
And you've done everything, at least for me, I did everything I wanted to do, and I would have been okay with it, but it's not the way I wanted it. And so, like, to be able to do a return flight, and then Heather and I decided that I'd do one more and hang it up, just kind of where I was in my career and like everything we've been through. It's like, okay, it's time to focus on healing and moving on. And I planned on giving it or putting it away about 6 months after that anyways. Wintertime in Alaska, and it's like, it's not worth it to me to try to fully
just
spin
go
back
out
up.
on your terms.
So we went out on my terms, dude. Like, went out on my terms on a high with my friends and family there, and it was a dream come true, right?
Didn't you bring the whole oncology team out for your finish flight?
Yes, I did.
And blast them.
Yeah, that's right. So we brought them out. We brought out my oncologist. I brought out my clinical trial nurse, and I brought out my CT technician. And the cool part about talking to them about it is that, like I told them, like, I have a lot of respect for what they do, because, they became my friends, right? And so I'm sure they develop friendships, but I couldn't imagine being an oncologist or working in that department and watching people you work on, if you will, or try to heal, like, pass away. And so, like, that's a tough thing to compartmentalize against. It's a different way than we do it. It's similar, but dude, you're watching people that you care about pass away, like, probably on a regular basis, right? And so they were appreciative that, they don't a lot of times you get to see post success, like, the person survives and they get to see what that gives them in their life. And so, like, I wanted to show them, like, hey, thank you for saving my life, and this is, like, what you've given me, like my wife, my kids, my family, my friends. So yeah, I was thankful.
Yeah. That's amazing, man.
They watched me get ready and start up a jet, and then I put them at the end of the runway and did a max power takeoff directly over the top of them. And it was, at least for my oncologist, he was very surprised to feel a Raptor fly over you at 600 miles an hour and feel the wind off of it.
Full AB.
He's like, I was not ready for that. And I'm like, well, welcome to, what our enemy sees, and welcome to some, United States of America and the power that we provide.
Dude, that's so incredible. That had to be that had
awesome,
to be a
man.
highlight of his career.
Yeah. I mean, they all really, really loved it, and to get to see into our world a little bit, and especially, like, to have a win for them, right? That was a clean kill for them, right? It was a clean kill.
Yeah.
Clean kill, 1.0 PK, the good way. And they, here I am because of them. So yeah.
Dude, amen, man. It's really inspirational. And, like, cancer's just touched so many people. It's in the fighter community.
Dude, it really has.
And then really everybody, we all know somebody or have experienced it ourselves. And just the strength that you demonstrated throughout that. And I know you're surrounded by your family and loved ones. And, we were talking throughout that time, and, I'm having a hard time putting into words. I'm just really, really inspired by that strength that you had.
Oh, well, thanks.
You're really one of the hardest things anyone could go to, because as a pilot, we've lost a lot of friends along the way.
Yeah. I know several pilots that have had cancer and they passed away.
And and you don't think about that. And you think, like, if I go out, it's going to be a smoking hole in the ground in an instant. You know what I mean? And I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
And then life throws you a curveball like that, and it's a challenge that you probably never expected.
No, your health is the health is a wild card, man. Like, you never know what is going to happen within your body. And yeah, it's just, can't get complacent and got to be ready for anything, man. It's just definitely not something that I expected to happen. And to your point about cancer touching people, I read a statistic somewhere that I think 48% of Americans at some point in their life will have some form of cancer. So nearly 50% of America will get cancer. What that is caused by, we know in some cases, and what it's caused by, we don't know in some cases. But obviously, you and I both know there's things you can do to help reduce your chances of cancer in certain areas. And so I try to be more cognizant of that now. I don't know if my military service caused the cancer, but I know it probably couldn't have helped with your exposure to, high altitude radiation, jet fuel, whatever, like burn pits flying overseas, like all that kind of stuff. And I think the VA has done a good job recently with like the PACT Act and things like that, give you an immediate presumptive condition to have disability based on deployments and where you were, either on the ground or in the airspace above it. So I'm thankful for that. But definitely there are some scholarly articles out there that incidences of cancer are higher in the aviation community than they are in other areas of service within the military. So
makes sense.
It's out there.
You just have a lot more exposure.
You do. You really do.
You know what? I don't care.
That's right, because it was worth it.
I do it again.
That's right. Sitting here alive, it was worth it, right?
Yeah, I'm surprised I made it this far.
My neck hurting in my back and survived cancer, totally worth it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you want to just, it's like some people just cling to life.
Yeah.
So hard that they don't actually live their life.
You got to live it, man. You got to live it.
Like, I don't know. I never cared until I had a family.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, and then you add a wife and young kids into the mix, and then you're like, oh, now's not the time,
Now is not the time.
Just thinking about it, is heavy. It brings you back there to that time.
I'm definitely not as cavalier with things that I used to be cavalier with when I did not have a wife and 3 kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you're like, okay, if I can just see them, my kids to where they become independent and they're good to go, then it's fine again. But now God didn't want to take you yet. So
well, like you said, pork chop. What was the exact words you used? You said you can be a good fighter pilot, but you can't be good at a whole lot else because of what it requires, right?
Right.
So that for me, like having another positive aspect of the cancer was being forced to slow down, like literally being put on my knees and forced to slow down, put on my knees that I've got to pray to stay alive, and sat down, if you will, like stand up, back in the day at pilot training, sat down and forced to think about my life priorities. Forced, dude. It's like, you can't fly anymore, John. So what are you going to do if you can't? So it really gave me the ability to, while I was fighting it, to go, like, what do I want out of my next phase of life? What are my 5, 10, 15-year plans? What if I can't fly anymore? What if I know that my lifespan is going to be reduced? Let's say the cancer was cured, but hey, you got 10 more years left, hypothetically, right? So like, what's really important to you? And what's important to me is my faith and my family and my friends. And so it's like, how do I cultivate that? Because that is another words of a mentor of mine was that, hey, one day you are going to get out of the Air Force. Somebody else is going to do their job better than you. And the big blue machine is going to keep on running. Right. And thankfully it keeps running because we got men and women who are good Americans and sign up to protect our country. And I can't do it forever, even though nobody will do it as good as me, right? I have to. Nobody will do it as good as me. No, come close, right?
New pilot training just will never get
nothing
them there.
Compared.
Sorry.
That's right. But thankfully, there's people out there that want to keep serving and signing up, right? But at the end of the day, that has to end, right? So what legacy are you building to, that's going to last generationally? And for me, that's my family. So that's what my fire in the belly is for now, is for that. And sitting here talking to a friend of mine who haven't seen in 14 years, but it feels like yesterday, and we've known each other for 21, and it's like we haven't been apart. So that kind of thing.
Dude, it's so cool. Now that we're kind of moving in like similar directions, I think in our lives, where it's like, it's probably our age, definitely the challenges along the way, but you do start thinking about like, okay, what are my priorities going to be? And
it's a big deal, man.
It's like you go, from you since 8 years old, it's like full AB towards one goal.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end of the road and it's like, it really forces that upon you. But
it does,
man, what an amazing, like, if you've split your life up in half, quarters, halves, whatever, like what an amazing first half. Like
it was a win for the first half, at least in my mind, for what I wanted to do and accomplish. Like I don't have any regrets, man. I had a blast doing it.
Yeah. It's so much fun. It like, I don't know if everyone will understand that where it's like, you're just like, I don't care. I would do it again, no matter what. Man. Like,
it's like to feel like always when I was a kid, I just wanted to see what it felt like flying a fighter. Right. And then it's like, you finally do. And it's just like, I guess the best description I can have is number one, it's like ultimate freedom. And then number two is just the sheer amount of power you feel all around you. And it's, like a sports car accelerates quick. Well, so does a jet, but it's like, pour, like, what do they say? Like pour the coals to it. Like just like the locomotive keeps going, where it's like, you shift gears in a car and there's a level of the acceleration lets off. But in a jet, it does not. Like you just keep getting, as you keep getting pushed back in the seat. And like, especially in the Raptor and the Eagle, it's like, you take off and you do an unrestricted climb in that thing. You look over your shoulder and you're just watching the surface of the earth just start to disappear. And it's like, it literally feels like the hand of God, hypothetically, grabs you and just like takes you up in the sky. It's like, that is power. Like that is, and it's just something you can't, I'm trying to describe it now, but you really can't do it justice unless you feel it. And so that was what.
And then just knowing you could kill anything with your fingertips.
It's a lot of responsibility and power, but it is empowering to know that all it takes is 2 actuations of your fingers and you're sending GPS guided weapons, on the ground or, downrange towards another plane. So it's cool, man. It's cool, right?
Absolutely. Next phase of life, family,
slow down and enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's really cool that we've got younger kids too, I think.
Yeah, that is cool.
It's like, people make it work no matter what, but the fact that we've hit a certain age to where you're able to reflect and then maybe make some of those changes where it's like, hey, I don't want to work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Moving every 2 years or whatever it may be. And the kids just kind of live at my house and then off they go. So
you're more of a figurehead sometimes than
like we see dad sometimes
we see dad,
as he's smoked on the couch because he's exhausted.
He's exhausted. You've given everything already.
But we're able to have done that and then can just pour ourselves into our families now and our friendships. And I think that's a huge blessing.
I couldn't agree more, man. That's exactly where I'm at. Yeah.
With all that, which is pretty heavy, but just looking at the way things are, politically, things going on around the world, kind of even the hardships, the joy, obviously, and the love that you've have for flying the jet, but also the hardships that go along with that. If your sons wanted to join today's Air Force, what would you tell them? I
would tell them if that's what they want to do, then I support it.
Yeah.
It's a honorable thing to do. It's important. That's why they call it, it's service for a reason. There's sacrifice and service, but it's important. And if you're willing to sacrifice and serve, then do it. But while you do it, remember your values as a Christian and your values as somebody that is from our family, and don't sacrifice your morals and your ethics to do the job. And if if those come into question, well, then you need to raise your hand and speak up.
Yeah. Dude, I think that's really good advice, really for anyone. Something that bothers me, and I'm trying to think about how to frame this myself, is that, you look at what's going on in the country. You know, clearly a lot of us do not like it.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would I want to serve what, obviously, honestly, a lot of stuff doesn't seem to be worthwhile. Like when I look at like Afghanistan and, we spent 20 years there, the things that we did, and then we just pull out one day.
Right.
And we're like, oh, actually we're going to just fund the Taliban, and they're not the real bad guys. The real bad guys were over here, or whatever the politics of that may be. You're like, well, why do we do this anyway? Anyhow, but at the flip side, it's like, if nobody with kind of our value system serves and raises their hand, then how much worse is that going to be in the future if we just completely abandon all institutions?
Yeah, no, you can't abandon it.
All, all avenues to have some ability to change anything. If you just say, don't do any of this stuff, where's that going to lead the country? Is it going to get better? Is there any chance of it getting better if nobody steps up and tries to make a difference? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling along a bit with this.
Yeah, no, but I get what you're saying. So I think, short, I guess, answer to that would be there has to be men and women who are still care enough about their country or have a desire to protect it that they got to stand up and raise their hand. Yeah. There's always going to be differences in political parties. There's going to be differences in opinions. There's going to be, times of, I guess, despair versus times of, elation or excitement, if you will, over what's happening in America. But I think what it comes down to is, God, family, country. And so I think if you, have, belief in God and you want to, raise your family in a way that, supports a lasting legacy, and you value your country, I think if you do those three things, you're doing something right. You know what I mean? And you cannot let all of the negativity that might be fabricated, might not be true, might just be to get ratings or whatever.
Clicks and outrage.
Yeah, you cannot let that change your mind from what your values are. And I think if, as parents and, if we develop those, then your kids are going to be strong enough to know what the BS is and what isn't and where they need to direct themselves.
I really like you said that you're just anchored in your value system.
You're anchored in your value system. And so you're ready to weather the storm, right? And so you got to be prepared to weather the storm because America needs strong people in it. And that's why we're still the best, right?
And what else are you going to do as a young guy who longs for adventure, wants to accomplish these goals, to feel that sensation of flying a fighter jet? Like, what are you going to tell that kid? Oh, no, don't do it.
Exactly.
Because reason X, Y, or Z. That's kind of demoralizing,
Yeah. Why would you ever tell somebody not to do it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially if it's something like that, like you're going to encourage it.
There's nowhere else you're going to be able to do that.
That's right.
I mean, you may go fishing in Alaska or something to kind of try to emulate it, but there's going to be nothing else like it.
You can't replace it. You're 100% true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Dude, that was awesome. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, man. Honor to be here with you as my friend and getting to sit here and tell you about it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And you got to come back soon or we'll go visit you guys. So
sounds good.
We got to do it again sooner than 14 years.
Yeah, if we can do that now. It turns out we have a little bit more time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're closer for the first time. 100%. Not on opposite sides of the world.
Yeah, not just on the phone.
On the phone, yeah.
All right, brothers. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Dale.
And we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man.
All right.
Cheers.